Call the meeting to order and document the time as 6:31. And Jen had contacted me about a basketball game that her daughters were involved with, so. And Mohammed is actually traveling back, so he will be in town physically the next time we meet.
Excellent.
So that's a good thing. If you would stand and do the pledge with me, I would appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Tori, if you would try to change my head direction with a little mindfulness, I would appreciate
Can
it.
we celebrate the grant that we got?
That would be a wonderful starting point if you want to lead with.
So our community just received the grant from the Vermont
Community Foundation
to continue our Mindful City project.
Very cool.
Which is lovely.
Great.
It's great for our kids, our families, our community, and our sense of culture and sense of community together. It's so nice.
Just to put one piece in perspective, from the grant committees, the Vermont Community Foundation Grants Administrator, is there Lauren Bruno? Just to read one clip. It says, your project represents the very best of innovative nonprofit work in Vermont. We are proud to support your work and that of your colleagues with this award. So it's pretty high praise for what it is we've got going on here.
Sure is.
And great gratitude to the faculty and the staff who are also bringing this a great practice to all our kids and making it such a great event. Yeah. So, all right.
All right.
So everyone can.
Good lead in.
Good lead in. All right, so everybody can just close your eyes or find a place to focus and take a deep breath in, fill your lungs all the way to the top. And then breathe out and just settle from your head space all the way down into your body. Take a deep breath in, focus up, and breathe out. Take a deep breath in, and breathing out slowly. Making this transition from where we've come from, coming together into this room to remind ourselves of who we are accountable for, what we're accountable for, to who, and at what cost. Find yourself a nice breathing pattern and just settle in. As you notice thoughts from earlier today, things that are on your mind of what's ahead, just bring it back to your breathing. We will come back into the room, ready to govern for the better of our kids and our community.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, any agenda review or adjustment items? I do have one small piece in the consent agenda we'll take up when I get there, but I think for right now, that'll hold us to a small piece. Okay, our focus on learning tonight, parent engagement. With that, Sean.
So parent engagement is our topic tonight, and some folks may be asking themselves, so we know why it's important that parents are engaged in their students' education, but how do they actually do it here? And we know from research, and as educators we also know, and many parents know from their own experience, how important it is for them to be involved in their child's education, whether it's nagging them to do homework at night, whether it's providing a healthy, safe home, whether it's to make sure that their basic needs are met, or enriching the school experience that's provided. And we just want to show a couple of the ways that parents are really, really engaged in the Winooski School District, and we're fortunate in that we have parents who contribute mightily to learning in our community. So to start off with, I want to thank the parent-run organizations that we have, because they do an amazing amount for our kids and for our community in general. PACS, a relatively new parent-run organization with a mission of supporting what's going on in the school, and one of their most recent activities is they're working on bringing some of the cultural training that happens in the schools with staff to the broader community. Having some of our cultural liaisons talk about their experiences and how best to connect with their specific cultural group. The Boosters is very present and supports particularly our athletic teams in amazing ways. Homecoming, the PTO, which has been around for a long, long time. People like Tammy Kusan and the Lamberts do a tremendous job supporting activities like the train show, raising money. This year, they had some real tangible contributions to the school in that they were able to purchase a new soundboard for the Performing Arts Center and a new laminator for the building. And then lastly, Dollars for Scholars, which provides $18,000 plus in scholarship money for our graduates each year. Some of the specific things that we do to engage parents from the very beginning of the year is we've created this tradition of the Welcome Back to School barbecue, where we have, in the last couple of years, had increasing attendance, upwards of serving over 1,000 meals and having great attendance by families to get the year started right and get a positive tone to the school year. Do you mind checking lights? Maybe we can get a light so that people can see those a little better. Thanks. Another great example is we're fortunate to have Danielle Jatlow, who works in the school, contracted with Centerpoint, and has developed a series of what are called parent meetups. And she has engaged parents and students in our school district to come together through different activities. For example, in these pictures, creating art together. They've come together to talk about the struggles of technology from a parent perspective. And these have been very, very successful, and we're in our second year of these events. STEM Family Fun Night, our second one this year. Again, an amazing success. Tons of parents and students coming in and engaging in science, technology, engineering, and mathematical exercises that are run by our own students, and a chance for parents to see what students are learning, learn from students, and have some fun with some different experiments together, like the egg drop. We continue with the PEP program, Parents as Educational Partners. We continue to increase the number of parents who are coming in and learning a lot of the functional and social English, working with our ELL teachers so that they can support their students as much as possible in their educational experience. One of the things that I've noticed is we have great involvement in our drama productions, and there are all these parents who are working behind the scenes to make it happen, whether they're helping with sets, whether they're helping with costumes, whether they're helping with lighting, corralling kids, feeding them during rehearsals. There's a tremendous amount of parent engagement in drama productions, aside from just coming to watch the productions and the finished product. iLab Share It Nights is a great way for us to bring in parents in the community to see the new kind of learning that a lot of our middle and high school students are doing, and have students share that learning with them. And it's a great way for us to kind of tee up some of the transformational changes in learning that we are headed toward. So some of the others, I mean, there are so many different ways, but some of the others that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention, you know, in addition to the drama productions, we have athletic events, band and chorus. We have great parents in the community who put all of these events out on Front Porch Forum and drum up the publicity so that we get good participation and attendance at the events. We will be hiring a part-time Burmese liaison in the new year, since that population in our community is increasing, so that we can do a better job of accessing that population, and we continue to use our new translation equipment in more events. The Evergreen document, which is something that Principal Wheeler and Assistant Principal Groden were sharing during parent-teacher conferences, which explains why we're moving to a proficiency-based graduation requirements and student-centered learning model in the high school next year. Middle school student-led conferences, a great way for parents to come in and learn about what their students are learning in middle school, and to be able to ask questions and bring that back to the home so that they can be engaged with their child around what they're learning. One of the things that our Director of Student Support Services, Robin Hood, wanted to make sure that we mentioned in this was that we have really high participation by parents in these different types of learning plan meetings, individual education plan meetings, 504s, and educational support team meetings. Our newsletter, which is a great way for us to communicate with parents and community members, which goes to every household, and is an opportunity for us to engage parents in different ways, whether it's giving tips and advice on developmental pieces with their different age children, or whether it's getting them up to speed with things that are happening in the school. The advisory task force, which we have some parents working on and helping us to develop these smaller communities in the middle and high school so that we can make sure that every student is really well known and feels like they have an adult that knows them well and cares about them and is their primary resource. And lastly, one of the things that's really blossomed in the last couple of years is the use of this facility. So we have several organizations, many of which parents are really heavily involved in, that create different opportunities for students, such as Girl Scouts, the Islamic School, in which we have many of our parents who are helping teach lessons in that, and other athletics outside of our co-curricular programs that our facility gets used for, and many of our students engage in, and parents are out there, whether it's coaching soccer, on Saturdays, or different events. So Leon and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have about parent engagement.
The liaisons that we have, how many do Nepalese, Bhutanese?
Right. We have
Somali.
Arabic speaking, Nepali, Somali, and part-time Vietnamese. Yep.
And the Burmese will be a part-time as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
When we get parents into school, teacher conferences and stuff, is that well used on the liaisons part, or the translators part, I should say, not the liaisons?
I hear them chuckling over here because they are flat out, running from room to room, you know, helping parents and teachers connect. And it's a pretty amazing endeavor that they go through to schedule parents, because they really have to go. They have to talk to parents. They have to get them into a calendar, and then make sure that it fits with the, having a single liaison for, in the case of Nepali and Somali, pretty big communities. And so they do a tremendous job, but it's a great linkage so that parents can come in and really ask questions that they want to ask to teachers, and teachers can get that information to parents at home.
And the parents as educational partners, that's the trying to get the parents in for English and understanding the school. How is that? We had an update on it last year, I believe. Is that
Right.
still well attended, or?
Still well attended.
Yeah, yeah. It's grown this year. You can see, in the past 2 years, it was kind of limited to 1 or 2 cultural groups, and now we see it expanding to other cultural groups as well, which is great.
Good.
Do the Bernese folks, is that just one language? You talk about the Karens who come from the Thai border?
It's not just one language, it's more than one.
Okay,
Yeah.
and this individual speaks all of them?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Specific talents, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Is there, like data or research to show how parent engagement impacts student achievement?
There is research out. I wouldn't be able to cite specific stuff off the top of my head, but there is research out there that supports it. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in general, it's safe to say that.
Right, I mean, it's intuitive, I just didn't know.
Right.
Johns Hopkins.
Proof.
Johns
It
Hopkins.
has they've done a lot. I forget what that program is that comes through Johns Hopkins. But they've done a tremendous amount of research on it. And we use the Annenberg Foundation, which has done a lot with
Annenberg Institute.
Annenberg Institute. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm wondering, there's so many amazing things that are going on with parent engagement, and I'm wondering, as a parent moving and hearing, moving from elementary to middle school and high school, is the ability for things to come into the homes around just updates of what's going on in middle school to high school, to keep that sort of conversation going so that you have more information to have conversations with your kids about what's happening in school and, you know, what's coming up and what to look forward to and that sort of thing. I've noticed, you know, there's not that piece coming in while there's all these other amazing
Right.
pieces. You know, it's just having these, you know, that transition I've noticed, speaking to other parents, is a hard transition not to get those. That's a weekly update you get in
Right,
elementary
that you get in
school.
elementary from
And in middle
both the
school, high
principal and the
school,
teacher.
yeah, you're not getting much. And I wonder about that ability in terms of continuing to build relationships from that piece is, you know, what is it, what is in place there for our middle school parents and our high school parents to get that sort of, hey, guess what, you know, look what's happening, da-da-da-da. That sometimes the newsletter doesn't always do, since it's a monthly
Right.
thing.
No, but I think it's a good observation, and I think where I would kind of place that is the evolution of the middle school teams, and that they're in a relatively new configuration, and they're figuring out some other stuff, and that's a piece that we want to ramp on over time.
It keeps those relationships pretty fresh,
Mhm.
which is really nice,
Yeah.
yeah. Some good, because there's some great stuff happening.
Yeah.
Good things to report out on.
Yeah.
To update on.
Anything else? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you did trip one thing that wasn't necessarily to this discussion in particular, but the educational support teams. I think we had a discussion about that sometime probably early this year, late last year.
So that's connected
And-
to the educational support system policy,
Right.
board policy?
Yeah, and so what I remember out of that discussion was that it got a passion out of both Julian and Mohammed for what it is and how we implement it. And I think we had asked at that point for an update or a refresh at some point in the not too distant future that I haven't seen.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if that might be somewhere in either the focus on learning at some point in relatively near future. And I think it was how deep some of that support gets. I think that was kind of
Yep.
around
Yeah, I think Tori was pretty excited about that, as I recall. Right?
Excited, what?
yeah.
Yeah, I think that whole
Yes,
system
yeah.
of communication and the roles and how that's working for our kids.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
From that
maybe
policy perspective,
just-
because it is a policy.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and was there gonna be a report on that one? Did
Yeah.
we- At some point, that was what we were.
Yeah, I
talking
thought
about.
we had discussed it being a year out from
Yeah.
last spring, so in the
Right.
spring sometime.
Yeah.
So we'll
Okay,
have
so
to
just
check
to
the
kinda
agenda
keep
plan
it
and make
on
sure
a-
it's in there, and
Okay.
decide what it is, whether it's a report to the board, whether it's just in the superintendent report, or what does that look like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. And just that triggered when you mentioned it.
Yeah,
It triggered
thanks for that, Mike.
that thought.
Mhm.
All right, public comments. Any comments? Okay, we'll have plenty of that momentarily, I'm sure. Consent agenda. I had only one item on here that I think was in the minutes from the November 11th meeting under section 6. And it's, I think it might be trivial, but I just wanted to make sure it was accurate. And that is in section A, the second line down, under board members receive a handout, and then it says, and the next line is and 2018. Said the district will need to reduce the budget by $280,000. I think that's more accurately would be stated as the district will need to reduce the initial budget estimate.
The baseline
By, or the
budget.
baseline budget
Yep.
by 200, it just sounded like we'll have to take last year's budget, reduce it by 280 and move it
Yep.
forward, so. That was really all I had there for.
And maybe specifying in FY17, because it could be a little confusing from that prior sentence with
Yep.
both years in it.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
But other than that, it got to the rest of the discussion, so. Anything else?
There was some, again, in the superintendent report, there's always fabulous things to celebrate about what's going on in our schools, which is great. I think one thing that I got really excited about was hearing that the kindergarten teachers went to a week-long play-based conference. It's like, yes, that is so fun, so great for our kindergartners and for our teachers. But also the movie, the most likely to succeed. It'd be great if we could do a second showing, because it'd be wonderful for more people to really get a hold of that information about education and high school design. I think that the evergreen piece that went out to parents before the middle school, high school student-led conferences was awesome, really well communicated around what is this thing we're calling high school redesign and how important it is to get that information out there and really start having broader conversations about that. It was also wonderful that it went out before parent-teacher conferences so we as parents could ask questions about it. Beautiful visuals, a big, huge one in the lobby as you walked in the door. That was very exciting.
That's the publication that went out in multiple languages as well, right?
Yes.
If I remember right.
5 languages, yeah.
And,
That was
and just
wonderful.
for a reference point, that was very pinpointed based on the target audience of who was receiving it in the mail to get the right language at the right point at the right time with that message. So I think that was the first time that we've been able to do that pinpointed communication in that mailing manner, right?
Right, and we've started to do it with both printed and with voice memos. So we're able to target specific languages with voice memos now that our liaisons will translate. They take their phone, I give them a script, and they read it into their phone, and they send it to me. And then I can attach it to that specific language in the all message program.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So fancy.
So back to, but again, it's back to the data manager, back to the ability to sort,
Yeah.
organize, and move all the data that we do have in useful ways, not just sorting and organizing for no apparent reason, so.
And so that decision-making in terms of how we're using our tax dollars effectively is actually, there's true evidence to show that it's really
Producing.
benefiting our families
Right.
and our organization. Yeah, it's
That's
great.
great.
All right, I would, anything else? Thank you. I would accept a motion to accept the consent agenda with the one noted update in the section 6.
So moved?
All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. All right. Section 6, budget work session.
Whoop, whoop.
We began last week. This is budget meeting number 2. Jay, Jim, Rebecca, you guys want to come up to the table? We're more than happy to have you here rather than in the back row. And thank you again for coming, and I think Sam wasn't going to be able to make it tonight.
No, but he's gonna come next week.
All right.
Green, blue?
Yep.
Wonderful colors.
Leon, you want to join us? Do you have, or
No
do you have a piece?
We're not doing any red chairs.
Green, only green chairs.
Right.
At least for me.
All right.
46Q.
Stand on the spot there.
Plus 16, oh, that's good.
I should pull up the other stuff.
Okay, so per the board budget timetable, this meeting is to kind of look at the progress since last week, since the first meeting last Wednesday, do any updating to the versions of our documents that we would do. We don't have any new information necessarily to start getting into tax implications, revenue changes that will hopefully come next week. The numbers that we all want, that we can start plugging into things and getting a clearer picture of where we will land. So for now, I'll ask you to be patient with what we have. And today really is updates. There was some questions last week that we were coming back with some answers. The number one, there was a keying error in the program page, which I will pass around to you right now, which has been, it's a front and a back.
Okay.
That will reflect the update. This is the only one of the financial documents that has changed since last week. Okay, so the ones that you have, object, function, have not changed, just the program. And so when you have that document, you will see at the bottom of the first page, there had been in the difference column, it had said like $46,000. It had been a keying error.
Oh, right.
The numbers still add up the way that we need them to.
Okay. So that didn't make any difference on the bottom line, it was just
No.
carryover.
Carry
Right.
over, copy and paste.
Yeah, bummer.
That's too bad.
Shucks.
It's all right, Julie, we've got other good news.
So the other, one of the other questions was, we had talked about how we were bringing all of the software and online subscriptions under IT, and we were grabbing them from other areas, and that's why you were seeing a pretty significant jump in the IT budget, a part of the IT budget. And you had asked for us to break that out a little bit. So we went back, the software subscription, when we consolidated everything, we're talking about a total of about $38,000. You'll see not an exact decrease in all of these other program areas because there's other moving pieces, but 21,000 of that came out of the office of the principal and into IT. 4,000 came out of special ed. Business and the nurse made up about 2,000, and then as we mentioned, there was a number of them out there that we had been kind of finding money to pay for, and they had not been coded properly. So we pulled all of those in to the tune of about 11,000, and that, so that's the detail around those subscriptions.
Okay, so if I understand then, in that category, that ended up being in the educational media library services.
Correct.
The overall increase that hasn't already been accounted for somewhere else is 38,000 out of that? Don't know if I asked that well.
I'd say the overall is 11, the ones that we didn't have coded somewhere else. The others are just shifts in coding.
Just coming from other
Have
places,
come from
other programs.
Yeah.
So in that category then, it's still showing an increase in the 130,000.
Right, so we've got computer equipment in there, we've got lots of other things that make up that 100. This is just a portion of it.
Right, but that is an add to the budget from last year rather than moving it around from somewhere else or another category. That is a pure add.
The
100, it's 165 here at Delta.
Right.
You're showing us, I think, about a 38K change in that category
Right.
due to movement of other things,
Yeah.
which leaves an increase in the 125,000 range.
Right.
So some of that comes from some equipment that the Nellie Mae program was paying for before. We had to move some of that back into the general fund.
Okay.
We had to bring up some of the library budget, which is in that fund as well. Or some of the big ticket items. And then we were trying to consolidate like supplies and toner, and we didn't get real down deep
Mhm.
into some of that stuff, but like say in the principal's budget, that stayed pretty level funded. But all the toner and all that peripheral stuff is coming out of the IT budget. We just didn't drill down to every little.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good, thank you.
So the, another question that came up was how much of the co-curricular is, the investment is in personnel, and then how much of it is in the other stuff, whether that's equipment, transportation, referees, all that kind of stuff. So we broke that out for you, and you can see a good chunk of it is personnel, coaches and faculty advisors and so forth. And then that other really makes up, you know, equipment, uniforms, transportation, all of those, the stuff that supports co-curricular activities.
Mhm.
And from a coaching perspective, typically we pay a head coach and one assistant? Is that what the,
Ty- Yes, typically. There
I
are
know
some
it's
who
not
only
all.
have one coach. Yep, and then oftentimes what happens is, if they don't have a paid assistant, or even if they do have a paid assistant, they have volunteer coaches as well.
Mhm.
You'll see in some sports there's one, sometimes even two volunteer coaches who do it for free. And lastly, we have some really good news. The equalized pupil count right now is up, which will help. So we have an increase of a little over 16 equalized pupils in the first number that we got from the state. And I guess I would add, like I did last year, that my belief is that some of that has to do with our data system that we've been developing, and that we are capturing more of the detail around our students that qualify for free and reduced lunch and English language learning services, and so we have a more accurate accounting, which is pushing that up.
What is our block grant per child again? It went up just a little bit this year, it's like 9,000 something.
I think it's all the way back here.
Yeah, it's it didn't go up much. Just
Yeah.
trying to get the number for you today.
Is that it?
Is that a way of asking how much are we going up by?
9,467.
$8.
So 9,467 times 16 kids or so?
Mhm.
Great. What's that? Almost 200,000? 150, I guess.
So every bit helps.
Every bit.
Yeah.
helps, yeah. It's
Yeah.
great news,
That
guys.
is great.
the base head count, 865? The,
ADM?
yeah,
Yeah.
Basic.
sorry.
Yeah.
Putting that into the Act 46 hat
Right.
briefly,
Yep.
okay.
I
No,
know,
I'll
we
take-
lobbied for it to be equalized pupils instead
I'll
of
take,
900 ADM, but
I'll take the hat off.
didn't buy it.
Good, that's good news. And the increase we're seeing, part of that was the pre-K from last year, but there are, what, 25.25 each, so it's,
So last year, they allowed us to estimate the number of pre-K we believe we were gonna have this year, and we were within like 3 kids.
Wow.
And they're not counted as a full FTE, so that's helping with the rolling average this year. It's a
Okay.
2-year rolling average.
okay.
And we were able to count all of them this year actual, so.
Okay. I'm just trying to put together the birth rates that we had seen, the drop from one piece of the data that we had last time,
Right.
which seemed odd.
And I think our belief is that some of that had to do with the change in the kindergarten entry date.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
yep, okay,
Um,
that makes sense.
yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't totally follow what was different on this new sheet than the sheet from last week. They look the same to me.
This one that I gave you?
Yeah.
So the only difference is if you go and look at wellness, and you go across that line, you should notice a difference in the numbers. In the delta column, I believe,
The
Right.
delta was wrong, it was
the
just a
difference column.
cut and paste.
24,263? Is that the one? No, sorry.
Right.
Two
The
lines
second
down,
line
two
on
rows
the
down.
Oh, I got you. Yes,
second, minus $120, it was 46, but it wasn't in the total.
Right, it was gonna be
So the 897 is still consistent.
Okay. All right.
Any more questions or comments on the updates, and then I can kind of get into the next piece? You guys all right?
Yep.
Jim, yeah?
Great.
Jim, last week, updates to now, any questions?
I don't know what you started with last week.
Yeah,
That was my
right,
year,
right, that's
so-
what, I mean, just based on what you.
Well, based upon what I'm
Followed
seeing
in the
here,
past.
I'm wondering why the family and consumer science is going up so much.
Why that went up was what we budgeted for a new hire and what we actually hired at were quite different. We hired a very experienced person, and the reason that there has been a propensity to hire less experienced folks in the past,
Mhm.
and so we find ourselves with a fairly inexperienced staff, and so we've been trying to blend that experience in the last couple of years, so that we, about 85% of our teachers have 13 or less years experience. So while we budget each year, we're building that budget before we're getting into the hiring cycle. And in this particular case, we hired someone that had more experience, so it cost us more.
So the propensity as well is to budget to a low new entry salary, and when you don't, you kind of undershoot.
Right, and we've adjusted for that. I mean, we budgeted kind of middle, probably middle low last year, and we're budgeting more towards the middle this year.
Another thing I've noticed is the propensity for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, I guess is the acronym. But looking at the math, I see that's going down by 5%, and the science is going down by 2%. And if you can explain those two for me.
So in the math, one of the reasons it's going down is there was an instructional assistant currently in high school that's coded to the high school math, and we've reduced that instructional assistant position in the math, helps support math. And the biggest change with the science is we had a change in staff again. At the end of the year, we had a teacher that was more experienced with a family plan, and when we hired, the person was only on a single plan, so there's some savings there. Those are the big differences for us.
So it's not a headcount reduction,
It's just staffing changes in their needs.
total compensation adjustments with the same headcount in the science case.
But there's no, as far as support for those particular curricula, are you going out and buying, or the same level of books and other support for those particular classes?
Well, as you'll see in the upcoming slides, we're not in a position to really be buying much of anything.
Yeah, that's where the Act 46 cap starts to work, so
Yeah.
we'll get into that one next.
Okay.
Or sheet over.
It's a challenging environment right now. So we wanted to give you a picture of, because we're still in this place of pretty significant uncertainty, where the legislature has not budged on the allowable growth, and we're not getting any word out of Montpelier at the moment. And so we need to plan for what is in legislation right now, which is for us to get down to that 2.75% expense increase year to year related to ed spending. So the baseline budget that you saw last week came out at a 6.4% increase. If we were to reduce from that 6.4% down to 2.75, we would need to reduce $344,000 from the budget. So what we wanted to do was give you a sense of what that might look like. Okay, we have not made these changes yet, and that's why you're not getting revised documents. because we're still waiting to see. We believe that we'll get clearer information in the upcoming weeks, and to keep changing documents back and forth doesn't make a lot of sense. So, if we needed to do this, these are some of the areas that we would be going. So for instance, a pre-kindergarten instructional assistant, busing for preschool, which we are not bound to or required to provide. Salary and benefits for new hires. We believe that we have some folks that we know are leaving, and we would budget for their replacements to the tune of $38,000 in savings. Another instructional aid in JFK. This would be 4 instructional aides now that we would be reducing. In the baseline, we'd already reduced 3. Not just we'd already reduced 4. Yeah. So this would be a 3rd from JFK, I believe. Chromebooks, that's specific to 5th graders. We were talking about kind of pushing that one-to-one environment down, so in preparation for middle school, not for kids taking them home, but having a one-to-one in the classroom.
Is that reduction saying we wouldn't be doing that now?
We would not be providing that.
What about the devices that already exist, like the?
That's in the budget, the replacement cycle for the ones that exist. Well, the ones that exist in 5th grade would stay there.
Okay, so the 5th graders would come to having one-to-one devices, just
They would
because of
have
it.
something there, what's
Okay.
there now, but I think it's iPads.
Yeah, it is iPads, yeah.
Yep. Field trip transportation, so we took a look at, and this is just transportation for field trips during the school day. And it cost us roughly around $20,000 a year to support that across the whole organization. So this would be splitting that in half, taking $10,000 out.
Would that mean then reducing field trips?
Yes. Or
Oh,
finding
from
other
PK
sources,
to-
or finding other sources to support paying for transportation.
From pre-K to high school?
Yes.
Across the board?
Tooth tutor. So we had, I think about 3 years back, entered into a contract, and we have a dental professional who facilitates, and many of our students who would probably not access dental care are able to access it during the school day, and we have a person who facilitates the transportation, the communication with the dental offices. That is the full cost and would go away. Co-curriculars, so $8,000, and I couldn't tell you right now specifically what that would be, but it would come out of that pool of middle high school co-curricular funding that we have. So as you can tell, this is like, which finger are you going to cut off? This, there is no fat, there is no places in the budget where we can reduce and say, we can kind of live with that. Maybe in the salary and benefits in the new hires. The iPads versus the Chromebooks. Those kinds of things where we can kind of cut far away from kids, we can live with. But some of this other stuff is going to change how we're servicing students. Yeah, Jim?
Of all of those that you've mentioned as being cuts, the one that I'm most disturbed about is the pre-K busing. Now, I know that's a large amount, but you're talking about safety of the littlest among us. And what are they, 3, 4, 5 years old? I don't think we should be cutting safety for kids of that age.
Yep.
Now, I know it's a large amount, but.
Well, it's not only a large amount, but we also have to look at what are we required to do by law, and then what are we not required to do? Because we have to make sure we're in compliance. And so those are part of the conversations that we have in the leadership team are, okay, we're sitting looking at each other going, where do we go next? We're down to, let's make sure we're in compliance with the law. What are the things that we are doing that we don't have to do? We want to do, but we don't have to do. We all agree with you.
Yep, no doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, I guess.
This is, again, I think it's the right thought process to at least put on the table is what do we have to do to stay in compliance
Yeah.
first. The question of whether we want to do this or not is a second question, right? Jay?
Yeah, I guess my thoughts are, I mean, none of this is good. This is the beginning of this. I think this is gonna continue in future years, that we're gonna face these kinds of challenges and these type of restrictions. And I think with that being said, you know, we need to kind of expand our thoughts a little bit to looking at administrative staff. I understand that we have contracts in place right now, but future-wise, you know, perhaps we need to start looking more at systems and at a little bit less personnel. And don't get me wrong, I'm talking positions and not people. I think our administrative staff here does a great job, but, you know, perhaps we can start looking at that, because I think that's quite a distance to cut from the children. And again, that's probably not something for right here, right now, but I think it's something that should be thought about. And my other thought process would be looking at things like the school resource officer. I don't think you can cut too much further away from children than that. He's not related to direct instruction. You have two camps on that thought, guys. You have some people that say, would need him here, have to have him here. There could be some type of incident or safety issue, or, you know, they're useful. You have other people that say, you know, we want police as far away from our children as we can get them. I'm not sure that either one is essentially correct, but it's a $50,000 piece of this budget, which would go a long way to meeting this goal. Those are my two thoughts.
Okay.
When we get to that point, I will debate you on all of those things.
I'd love to.
You know, but it's hard. I mean, we've talked about all these things and put everything on the table, you know, and it is really challenging to. And part of that, I think, comes from the fact that we're starting in a place that, as far as since I've been here, we've never had fat to cut from the budget. You know, I think some other districts are starting in different places.
Yep, I agree.
And have some, you know, and we're talking about, you know, an organization and a population of students that require a lot of support.
The, going back to one of the earlier, actually, the other side of this, and to my earlier question about sports coaching, head coach, assistants, two-thirds of the athletic budget, or co-curricular and / athletics budget is salaries. Wondering how much there might be there. I know they're important. You definitely need a head coach. We have a pretty robust volunteer coach crew. Be something to consider.
Yeah. Yep.
Tell you something else to consider is suspending all of sports between schools for a year, which is a terrible, terrible thing. But, I mean, I think that if we're talking about cutting more things for students, or cutting, you know, taking people to play against other schools, I think it is a way to get the attention of a lot of the legislature. And if we do that, then I think probably others would follow suit. And I think it would become very apparent very quickly to people that, you know, this flat cap across the board thing is not really a wise way to trim budgets. You know, and if the point of having sports is to give kids an opportunity to develop themselves physically and so forth, I think there's other avenues to do that that don't necessarily involve playing against other schools and so forth. And ultimately, if the core of this place is educational, understanding even that educational implies a lot of wellness stuff, right, and just some physical stuff. You know, I think we gotta consider that before we start cutting people in positions.
I agree with you. I think the short-term challenge we would face would be around school choice, where we might have a number of kids who would want to access school choice so that they could participate if others did not follow
Right.
what we were doing.
They'd bail out.
And then we would be in a difficult position, you know, having 220 students in high school, and if you lose X number.
Right, right.
I think your point is well taken, though.
Yeah.
I don't think one individual school
Right.
is going to really make a difference statewide,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well, I think that we also have other schools who have AstroTurf that they were able to afford, so why would they give up something they don't have to give up? And I
Yeah.
think that there, again, we're looking at institutional racism and classism,
Yeah.
where there are schools that haven't had to think about the things that we've had to think about and cut in places that we don't have to cut in.
Yeah.
Why would you give up what you don't have to give up?
Well, you're right, and especially if, I don't know, I mean, the 2.75 thing seems crazy if you look at the spending per pupil that we do,
Right.
right? I mean, spending per, that's the AstroTurf thing, right? So
Right,
other
because we've
schools-
already been frugal, right?
Yeah,
We've been
we're
frugal with a
frugal
really
from the
complex
Right.
population, and other districts have not had to make the choices we've had to make.
Yeah.
And there again, when we look at communities that are, we get our money from education based on the community's gonna have more to give those schools and less to give other schools, and it creates that inequality, which we face nationwide.
Yeah,
And here we are doing a flat cap
yeah,
to, like you said, freeze inequality.
yeah.
Those that have, those that don't have.
Mm.
So let's just keep it right there. So that's
Okay.
what makes it really,
I would just say, when it comes to things like sports, guys, especially in this district with our populace, and we're talking about the have-nots versus the haves, there are a fair number of students in certain programs and in certain sports that's what's keeping them coming to school. It's not what's happening in the classroom.
Right.
You cut sports, you're gonna lose students. You will get children that will drop out because they're here for sports. And they'll actually even try harder in the classroom so they can stay on the team.
It's a
It's a little
Yeah.
game that gets played,
But it's
but
another
you'll watch,
entry
the
into
administrators will
education.
watch it play
Yeah.
out every year.
Yeah.
You know, and it actually keeps kids in school, so that's a dangerous game to play.
it is. But some kids need a different entry into education. And if they
Yep.
can find it through their personalized interest and motivations, then it keeps them where they need to be. And I think.
The point is, if we all do want to offer a program of breadth and depth.
Yes.
Yes.
And we're at a point now where it's a real struggle to support that.
So let me just stop for 1 second and take this page with a balance to reduce after this, 228. One of the comments that we heard it with Dave, why can I never, Sharp, I can never think of Dave's last name, was that one of the items that they had was to take the benefit, the benefit increase of the 7.9% and exclude that from the 2.7 cap. If that were to happen to be the case, you'd have 127,006. You essentially close that delta with that one adjustment.
Explain that to me.
So what are the 2.75% cap is Act 46. That's all we get. If we go above that, we double tax.
Right,
So the incentive to go over that is minimized, I'll call it that way.
okay.
It's been very clearly stated around the state that this is not something that's gonna go forward without some level of potential adjustment based on the communication that's been moving back and forth. And one of the thoughts was, in the equation of the 2.75 cap, was to not have the benefits count as a piece of that increase.
Because
So
the benefits
that
are
you
going up
don't
themselves
have
7%,
a-
just so that
yep.
everyone is, yeah.
7.9%.
Right.
The increase in benefits year to year.
Right,
Not
right.
included, right.
Right.
Okay.
So that ends up for us being 4% or 127.6, which
Well,
not coincidentally
if I
closes
may
that
say-
particular gap.
different schools have different benefit plans too.
Right. They're all pretty well.
They have
The
different-
increase is all the same.
There's different employee and employer contributions to those plans, but they're also all within a pretty tight range, particularly in Chittenden County.
Okay.
So there's not a big difference, and there certainly isn't a difference in the types of plans. Pretty much everybody is a part of VHI and Blue Cross Blue Shield and Delta Dental and so forth.
I guess my point is that one of the conversations about a potential change to Act 46, the way it sits, is to not count the benefits
I
piece of this
understand what you're
increase.
saying, but I'm just saying, I'm
Just-
also saying that the benefits from a school
State
in
holds the
Chittenden
rest.
County might be different from the benefits in Wyndham County, as an example. I don't know if that's
For the
case.
most part, I mean, I think it's like 98% of school districts and supervisory unions.
Have the same
yeah,
basic
that all
benefit plan.
subscribe through VI.
Right.
Yeah.
But that hasn't happened yet,
No,
correct?
no, those are ongoing. So one of our later discussion topics is we do have a meeting with Burlington and our legislators on this specific topic, and some city business. That's was that next week?
Next Thursday. yeah.
Next Thursday. So we have an ability to take this stuff from our perspective forward and you know, plead a case. We still have to get with the Burlington team to make sure we have I can't imagine we wouldn't have a relatively common list of
Yeah, agenda
wish
items for that.
lists or agenda items, so.
Sorry to be dense about this part again, but the revenue projections, help me understand how the difference in revenue projections and expected compensation for the special ed, reimbursement rather for the special ed, affects the total increase here. If we know that we get a certain amount of reimbursement from the federal government for the 400,000 increase in special ed that we're projecting here, does that change our bottom line?
So when I came up with this number, when I looked at this, I forecasted revenues to take off from the top. So what happens is you take the special ed and you take the 56.4%, and that's your revenue that you get for the intensive reimbursement plus your block grant. So when I did the overall forecasted revenue, I already included what I projected our revenue to be based on our expenses.
Okay. So that means that total increase that we see there of,
Which total, say the number.
yeah,
that you're-
And what's a little difficult about that, Julian, is
Yeah.
that total increase also includes what we call extraordinary costs or state place. So there's different funding sources and revenue formulas for those. So it's not a real simple answer. I'd
Right.
be happy to do something in the future to explain how I come up with the special ed revenue. But it's a little more complicated than just taking the number and multiplying it times 56.4%.
right. I guess what I'm saying is if we know that if we believe that it's going to increase our special ed by, I guess combined over $500,000 here, right? 469 plus 168 is what we think is going to increase next year, right? That contributes to the 6.4% overall increase, right?
On the expense side.
On the
Expense side.
expense side.
Yeah.
And then and so does the mitigation of the federal reimbursements reduce that total 6.4% to something different? No.
It increases the revenue,
Yeah.
which ultimately helps us with our ed spending number
Okay.
and our tax.
It helps with what we go ask the public for, but still doesn't change the ultimate 640 that's way above the 275.
Correct.
So the 275 has nothing to do with what you ask for taxes. It has only to do with your actual budget.
Your education.
Your actual operating
Education
expense.
spending.
That increase is what the state has to reimburse some portion of through the whole process.
Because the 2.75 isn't the total budget, because when we have the total budget, we're gonna back out some revenues, like the mainstream block grant or the triple E grant,
Right.
or things that we were forecasting, and then that's where you come up with your ed spending.
Right. Well, that's where you come up with your tax ask, different than what we're actually increasing the budget to.
Yeah, the higher the revenue, the lower
Lower
the ed spending,
spending.
the lower the taxes. If those other factors like CLA, equalized pupil count,
Right.
stay relatively flat or move in your favor.
Right. We don't know anything about CLA yet.
No.
That's usually a January 1st number.
And I think just, again, from a gut feel, that's gonna move in a direction that, because housing in the city is selling fairly robustly, that one will work against us.
Against us.
And,
It'll work in favor of the city from a tax revenue,
right.
and it goes against.
And we're moving away from our last assessment. The further you move away, and if you keep those good sales,
Yeah.
the CLA could start, because we've been very fortunate with that, I think, over the last 5-6 years.
Right, but when you think about it that way, that's not necessarily a good thing for the city as a whole.
Nope.
You'll
not at all.
benefit from the school, but you're not selling houses in the city for what
Correct.
they should be valued at. So, you know, the unfortunate trade-off is the bonus of why we are all, you know, satisfied, I don't know, myself at least, satisfied with the way the direction of the city's in the last couple of years, so
So Mike
we'll
kind
work
of
with it.
pulled us to the heart of the matter here, on the right-hand side of the slide.
Yep.
So, you know, you can see supplies, that, you know, in the grand scheme of things, not huge dollar amounts. So those total reductions get us to 228. So we have a balance of 116. All I can tell you is that's got to be staffing, it's got to be and/or programs. Because at that point, there's, you know, I mean, we're getting down to having no stuff to run programs with, or to give to the staff to run what they're doing.
The,
116 non-personnel sports activities we have around here. Not coincidentally. You know, I mean, look, if we were to go that route, I know you guys don't like that one bit, and I don't disagree with you. But if you know, we would almost have to do that as like, publicity stunt is not quite the right word, but it's like an awareness raising kind of thing. Like, this is what we're down to, you know? It would have to be something loud. It would have to be something that we'd have to try to get other school districts to get on board with, and that we would have to use, you know, as a way to get attention from the legislature about what all this means, the kinds of impacts that it's having. And I get that it's an attractor for students, and I get that people, if they didn't have that opportunity here, would go other places. But if this is the writing on the wall for the future, then other places eventually, sooner or later, are going to start feeling the same pinch.
And I hear you. I think that I like where your line of thinking is going on that. My concern is that, I guess we have to do what we have to do anyway, regardless, because this has been decided by our government that, you know, our state government, that we have to do this. My concern is that if Winooski loses sports, it's not going to matter.
Yeah, right.
Because it's been in that trend in my mind, how Winooski has spent so low for so long.
Yeah.
In Chittenden County, where people are like, Chittenden County's fine. Even our governor said that. Chittenden County's fine.
Yeah, we're great.
You know, because of who we assume is in, and we get forgotten.
Mhm.
You know, our community, our kids, our families are the most vulnerable, and
Yep.
they get forgotten. So my only concern is that it's not going to matter a damn
Yeah,
about it. You know,
We're
but
too
our
small.
kids,
Yeah.
our kids lose
yeah.
access to
Right.
something that could expand their minds and their hearts and keep them in the game.
Keep them in the
right?
game.
And
Yeah.
the sacrifice
so-
is meaningless because nobody pays attention.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so, and I think that happens, but I think that
I think people would pay
we're gonna have to
attention.
cut no matter
I-
what.
I think that
whether
would get
people pay
huge
attention or
press
not.
if that ever happened, you know?
I
Huh?
think,
It would get huge. I mean, I think it would get a lot of attention if we did that. I think it would get huge press if we ever did that.
but I think one of these caveats is to have the area
Right.
districts
Right.
in as well,
Right.
not just we're out,
Right.
right, a one and out. I think the impact comes
With other
when you do
schools
it in a
joining.
broader,
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
do it as a broader,
Yeah. I don't know if it's a caveat, but
As
it
a
would,
broader
it would certainly
concept.
be more impactful
It
if that
would.
were the case.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your comment? You
I
were-
would just say bad pun when you said game.
Oh, yeah.
So our plan moving
But-
forward is to pray for better information before next Wednesday.
Okay.
And secondly, to continue to sharpen the pencils and have the difficult conversations and be ready to go in these kind of different layers down to this of 2.75 and finding that additional 116 to some gradations in between there.
how, you came up with an initial list here. How impactful overall is this particular piece, this batch?
This 228?
Yeah. I mean,
Very.
it's IAs,
Yeah.
understood, it definitely gets
It's
to the people.
more IAs, and
Yeah.
that's really concerning
Right.
to the leadership team.
Well, especially after the conversation last week about how much more needy our kids seem to be coming in.
Yeah. And the level of support to get the teaching done.
Right.
You know, and to have the
Exactly.
support
It's
to
not
get
that
kids
our
to have
need
access.
is
I mean,
level.
blessing is Needs less.
Our need is actually increasing while our resources are decreasing.
Well,
That's exactly it.
one of the counter pieces we have is our head count is not dropping. It's been relatively constant. The whole premise behind this is we've got less kids in the classroom and we need to cut. We are not following that, and we don't look like and it's not outlooked that we are going to lose,
Yeah.
No, it's pretty flat.
well, I think it's
Pretty
even,
good range.
I think it's even different than that, because we had somebody else do the projections, and I'll let you guys, Jay, you saw this
Yeah.
last week, but Jim, the dark line here, and today is somewhere in this neighborhood here. The projection for births as you move forward is not down.
Yeah.
So,
In fact, it's up.
you know,
Yep.
by default, you gotta consider that we're gonna remain flat, if not go the other way.
And
So,
then 6 years later, they entered the school. Yeah.
right, offset.
I'll tell you, these 16 kids are huge. Because this would be even more horrific if that didn't happen.
Right.
We were pretty
No, we
happy
can
to
get
get
your
that
copy
number
of that.
Sunday
Yeah,
night.
oh yeah,
Even
absolutely.
Sunday night about 10
Actually,
o'clock.
keep that one. All right, so again, we've got,
But sorry.
Yep.
Let me just ask one question here, Mike. If the pupil goes up from 25 to 41, that's still on the revenue side. That doesn't affect how much, that doesn't affect that 275, right?
What that does is when you have more pupils, you get that allowance for more education spending.
remember, it's a 2.75% increase against the equalized pupil, per equalized pupil spending. That's where the 2.75 is measured against.
Okay.
So the more of those
when you turn it
you
into real
have-
numbers, that is a good thing then, even on the expense side.
Correct.
Exactly.
Plus increased revenue from the block grant, that extra 9,000 or so.
No, right, but on the revenue side, we still have to cut no matter what the revenue is
Correct.
Right.
to get to 275.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
That number, that 344, would have been higher if we hadn't have gotten those extra 16 students.
Right. In fact, it was, right? Wasn't it higher last week?
It would have been higher.
What were we like at 5 or something? All right.
So that was the piece of
So,
good
I
news we
mean,
brought
to
you.
answer your question a little bit more directly, I'm concerned about the busing. And, you know, I think the board has made a significant investment in preschool, and it's a great investment. And I think we're seeing, early success there. So to decrease access for some families is an issue. Another IA, I'm very concerned about that, particularly at JFK, while we've already reduced 4 or 5. Transportation on field trips, opportunities for our kids to get out into our community and other communities and have enriching experience connected to them. That's an equity issue in my book.
Yes, it
And-
is.
And we're reducing one of the components.
And it's an equity issue around pre-K busing for families who wouldn't be able to do that.
Yep. Absolutely.
And the co-curricular, I think that's equity too.
And I think the tooth tutor is equity.
Yep,
Yep.
for sure.
A lot of our families need, this tooth tutor has been a huge benefit to our families and to our kids for our wellness.
This is really bad,
Yeah,
really is.
it's really bad.
Yep. But we have been dealt a hand, and we must move forward and try to figure out how to deal with it the best we can, even if that means trying to convince, coerce, or coordinate
Or pray, that
a
was one of our.
change. But, hope is never the best plan you can have, but it's,
Yeah.
we have to hope for the best, plan for the worst, and come out hopefully somewhere in the middle.
Is it
think
too
that's
early,
our-
is it too early to talk about the amount that is in reserve?
We can't use it.
Right,
We
that
decided
capital,
not to use it
that capital reserve that's in there has to be used for capital projects
Okay,
themselves.
just for
Won't allow
capital
us.
projects?
What we have been
I know a
doing,
year ago, we had a special ballot item and that we were
Mm-hmm.
going to use some of that capital reserve in building the current budget.
yep, so what we
The fund
have been
balance.
doing over
balance,
the
not the
last.
capital reserve.
Right. So what we have been doing, so let me take it in two pieces. What we have been doing over the past few years is carrying about 100,000, which is about a 1%, a little under a 1% positive balance to the total budget, which is decent number from, it's not excessive, let's put it that way. We have been carrying 100,000 back into the new budget and putting anything above that into the reserve account.
Okay.
We've got some big things coming later. The problem, not the problem, the challenge you have is that as you move that 100,000 excess that we had last year into this year's budget, next year, you gotta have 100,000 extra, or you're gonna have to pay for it.
Yep.
So you've got this drug, I mean, we're running on about a $50,000 potential excess this year, which is less than what we've been carrying forward. So we're gonna have to pay the piper that other 50,000 that we put into programs and are, well, now cutting them out.
Yep.
So that's, and we have to put it on the ballot to use it or put it into the reserve fund. So those are what we've been talking about on that end.
So, just a couple things to wrap it up. Number one, all of the budget-related documents will be posted on the website, so you can access them there. And the new ones from tonight will be added tomorrow. And secondly, our goal for next Wednesday is to be able to come back with you. There is a revised 3-year comparison document that many of you are used to seeing that combines the expense side, the revenue, the equalized pupils, ed spending, all that stuff to give us a better look. It has to be calculated a little bit differently this year because of the cap. And so Rebecca and other finance business managers are getting some training on that this Friday, and the state will be updating their document in which you calculate all of this. We are hoping to have that so at least we can start plugging in some of those other numbers and get a clearer picture for next Wednesday.
Will we have enough by next Wednesday to actually come and meet? Our next option unfortunately becomes the 23rd.
I think we would know that
so-
by Monday. I think if we got to Monday afternoon and said, holy mackerel, we don't have any of this, then I will be in touch with you and we'll figure out where to go from there.
Options from there. The week after is Christmas. The Wednesday after, we had tentatively scheduled something on the 23rd.
Yep.
Which is not exceptionally enticing to me.
To any of us.
I don't, okay, I'm glad everybody's,
30th in December.
I'm glad everybody's in the
Yeah.
same bus we can't
Yeah,
afford.
no.
So would we move it to, I mean, we'll have to
January?
check
We
Thursdays,
haven't
Friday, and then back. What do we have in January for time? We have to be done at a certain time to get this to the printer. Is
we
that
have
the middle of
We have a
January?
budget meeting scheduled for the final review of January 6th.
6.
And then
okay.
you would adopt it at board meeting on January 13th.
Which
And
is
we get
our-
it to the printers on the 15th, is the board timeline right now.
Okay.
Printers are going to be overrun at the last minute this year, I'm telling you.
And is it, but you're saying there's no indication that any decisions are going to be made once they get back into session? The
It
state?
is-
I haven't
It's
heard
hot.
anything this
Yeah,
week.
okay.
The
been a
governor
while. They're not there
said,
yet.
the governor said he wants everybody to get back together and to do it before the middle of January.
Before the middle of January.
Yeah.
So they
We
are
need it
aware
the
of
middle
our
of December.
deadlines, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And when do they get back into session?
Okay, so
First
let's,
week of January.
Okay.
so let's leave it this way then. Next Wednesday, we're on for our third
Okay.
budget meeting. If on Monday, we don't have enough information to make it worth anybody's time to come and look, we will look at Thursday, potentially Friday. After that, I think we move to the 6th.
We can certainly.
Unless
send
you
it.
guys want to try to meet in the week after Christmas.
Wait, what happened to the 23rd?
So the 23rd, I'm just too close to Christmas to,
Oh, no, I mean, I think we should do the 23rd.
yeah?
If we don't have anything next week, I think we gotta come back the 23rd.
I mean,
I can do it.
How
I'm
wild
not
it
going
is,
anywhere.
guys. You're
I'm not going anywhere. I
cutting it
can do
really
it.
close, pushing it to
Yep.
the 6th.
Yeah, yeah,
If,
yeah.
if there's something that needs to be debated by the board,
Okay.
or,
Right.
Yeah.
or you
No,
have to send the
Perfect.
superintendent, the business manager back for something, you're leaving them no time.
We gotta
Okay.
come back.
Would be my only
Well,
concern.
maybe we could do it earlier that week, like the 22nd or the 21st
Yep.
instead of the 23rd.
I'm here, I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not either, I'm
Okay.
here.
Yeah.
All right, so we go with
Yeah.
next Wednesday, we'll
If not next
figure
Monday,
out-
if not next Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah, and then we'll look at as early in the following week as we can have any useful information to get together.
Yeah.
All right, good. Anything else before we close the budget talk? Thank you for sharpening your pencils and banging your
Yeah,
heads.
thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
More banging to go, so hopefully
Yeah.
the surface is still intact. And we'll take that next week. Thank you. Great discussion. Again, we got to plan for the worst and hope for the best and see what happens. Thank you, Jay. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jim.
thank you,
Appreciate
Jim.
it. You're
Thank
more
you,
than
Jay.
welcome to, you're more than welcome to stay. We have
I
a,
know, it makes such a difference to have your voice at the table.
we'll move now.
Different perspectives, but I am a senior citizen now, and senior citizens, our social security is not going up.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have to be more conscious of our funds, and if this is going up 2.75%, regardless of the CLA, because it could be even higher than that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, well. It is what it is.
On we go, right?
Happy walking.
All right, so now we have a presentation. We had a view several months ago on the house model. That was, and then I will be looking for some input for your initial reactions. And so with that, I'll turn it to Sean for a brief intro.
Yep.
Who,
So I would like to introduce you to Principal Leon Wheeler, Assistant Principal Kate Groden, and high school teacher and iLab innovator, Mr. Matthew Webb. And they are going to walk you through our presentation, and I know that they are open to questions and comments, and this being a real back and forth and good conversation tonight.
So we'll want to make sure that we go through some basic information.
Just stand over there if you can, Leon, just
Okay.
so that he can, the mic on the,
Got it.
is over there.
I'd like you, I'm going to pass those cards around, and if you can jot down, I mean, you know what this is about. It was on the agenda. This is about House Model 2015-16, sorry, 2016-17. So it's about what is happening, some changes that are happening. And I anticipate that you're coming in with questions that you'd like to make sure get answered. So if you want to just take a moment to think about what is it that you would like to have answered or addressed in this conversation, that will be helpful for us. I'd like to collect those initially so that as we present and after we present, we can start by looking at those initial questions as a starting point for conversation. And then we'll give you more opportunity to share as well. So, for the last 3.5 years, we've really been given a great opportunity. We've had an opportunity through funding through the Nellie Mae Foundation, and I'm talking before I wanted to. I want to wait for a minute. Sorry.
if anybody needs another card here, let me know. If I got more. Right.
Here's some.
Okay.
And the questions can really just be a starting point. You don't have to go into great detail. while you're finishing up, I'll also introduce Tom Pear is also here, the math teacher leader. So Matt and I will really do the initial presentation, and Kate, Tom, and possibly Lindsay. Yeah, depends on what kind of questions.
That's why I
you know.
didn't introduce you. I didn't know whether you were.
No, she's just here observing. She's just here observing. Yep.
Watching the magic happen.
So, 3.5 years ago, when we were given the Nellie Mae grant, we were really given a great opportunity, and it was kind of a crisis meets opportunity situation. We had funding to do something that was going to really matter, and it was going to center around student-centered learning and proficiency-based learning, and we seized it. We took it very seriously. We have worked really hard. We've developed a number of things. The state of Vermont was in a place where they were also grappling with some really important change needs in the state of education. And so they supported the work that we were already doing, and they even legislated some of that work. And so it seemed like a number of pieces came together to not only make it possible for us to do this work, but to validate the work that we were doing on some level. Like any other change, it's been really messy, it's been challenging, and we're not doing all of it really well. In some pieces we are doing incredibly well, but it's bearing fruit. And I think all of us have experienced on some level people talking about what's happening in Winooski with education and with other things as well. So one of the things that has happened over the course of these 3.5 years is to get more clear about not only what is important in order for students to be really college and career ready, but what are the pieces that support that, and how do these pieces start to come together? And part of the document that was sent out, the Evergreen document, included this graphic. The 3 strands that we've identified that will ensure, as we provide opportunities for students to weave these strands together, will ensure that students come out of our system, college and career ready, are those 3 there. The GXs, which we've defined, the 6 GXs, the GPs, which are graduation proficiencies identified and taken from Ed Quality standards, from the new Common Core standards, from the Next Generation Science standards, from math standards, and from other content standards. We've pulled together a list of 22 graduation proficiencies, and those proficiencies fit, they really support the development of the graduation expectations. So they're on some level under the umbrella of the graduation expectations. But there's content involved in those, and they provide a context. And so the students need not only to really be developing those overarching skills, but they've got to have experiences that provide content, knowledge, and practice. And those are the GPs. But they also need a level of reading and math skill that is equal to what would be required for them to enter into college without the need for remediation. So we've identified also what those levels are for a reading level and a math level. And so the question then is, so this is all symbolic. It's we believe it. We've got systems that are built to do that. But how do we really know that when our students graduate, they are really college and career ready, that they've taken these and woven them together and they have what they need? So an illuminating experience happened for me when the leadership team trying to figure out what kind of a transcript do we create that really shows what we're talking about, the commitment that we're making, as a school. What does a transcript look like that shows this student is college and career ready because they've developed this graduation expectation, and they've done that through these proficiencies. They've got this graduation expectation through these proficiencies. The process of seeing on paper what a transcript could look like was incredibly illuminating, and made this theoretical, I believed it was real, I believed it could happen. It made it real for me in a way that I hadn't experienced before, and that was just, I think at the end of last year, we started to develop it. This year, we developed it more, this concept. And so I wanted to make sure that we start here at this point so that you have an opportunity to see what does it really mean? What are we talking about as we talk about students becoming graduate ready, or college and career ready. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, Matt, to you.
Do I need to
You
stand
want the
somewhere for
clicker?
the mic? No, you can click for me.
Good.
Good here? Okay. So, as we've been planning how to organize all of this, one of our priorities has been to make sure that the GXs, the graduate expectations, which are the 6 characteristics, skill, abilities that our students will have when they graduate, that those will be our primary driver, because there are thousands of standards, there are 24 proficiencies, but we want to make sure that our kids can communicate well, that they can work in culture and community well, that they can critical think and problem solve, that they have creativity, which is really another kind of problem solving, that they have persistence, and that they have the one I've forgotten. There's 6, I'm going to only remember.
Effective oral communication.
Well-being, it's going to be well-being. Right, and that they know how to regulate their bodies and themselves and their lives. Those are the most important things. So as we looked at the transcript, we thought, okay, we're going to break down the GPs, the graduate proficiencies, the content opportunities through which they learn these overarching skills. We're going to sort them under the graduate expectations, the big 6. This shows what it might look like for one of them. It says culture and community. Nothing on here is real. It's all imaginary, but it projects what this might look like. So if we look at it first, there is graduate expectation number 3, culture and community. Under that is the descriptor. Our goal is, as Mr. Wheeler said, this is a transcript that's not only important for our students, but it's especially important for colleges. And so we want to make this as accessible as possible to colleges or employers. Employers don't always see the transcript, but sometimes they do. And we want people to know what this means. So it says, I know and appreciate different people, cultures, and perspectives, and participate in the life of my community and the greater world. That makes clear what we're driving towards. That is the thing that we want our students to be able to do for this graduate expectation. Then it talks about the capstone complex assessment. The way that we're structuring these is that students will have an opportunity, much as they do at the senior project, and much as they did at Expo Day for all the middle and high school students at the end of last year, to showcase everything that they've done and to get really community feedback and to have to step up and make it meaningful, not just do it for a test or do it to put in a folder. So the complex assessment is the big deal, that it would be their capstone culminating experience. We'd include the title, when they completed it, the level. We're not certain on the levels, but we're just for right now working on how we grade the senior project. We're using those levels. If a student doesn't achieve that level, it's not going to appear on here. This is a record of when students accomplished it. Probably accomplished it the first time at the standard we're expecting as a school. You can see slightly indented the related graduate proficiencies. For culture and community, there are 4. What the 4 are is less important, I think, at the moment than the other categories we'd want to record. One is the learning method. You can see under the learning method, there are a few of actually the many possibilities. It says iLab, happens to say it twice. I made the form, so that's probably why it says it twice, but it also says magnet classes, which is a more traditional class.
but which is a little more content-driven.
Is that an AP class? Is that what Magnet?
Magnet, no, it's just a word we used. I don't even know if we'll continue to use it, but the idea is kids from all the houses, it would be like a magnet, and kids from all the houses would be drawn to it as a content possibility.
One specific content, not broader exploration. An algebra class.
For example. Yeah.
It's something
Yeah.
very relatively
Right.
specific
Or
to all.
even something like McQueen could teach the Civil War. You'd love that. Do that for a trimester, you know, or two. The Vermont Youth Conservation Corps is the bottom one listed. For example, we've got lists of all kinds of different possibilities that include internships. Math lab isn't listed there under culture and community, but math labs. And we're talking about studio times where teachers may be more flexibly assigned so that it'd be a little bit like a cross of the iLab with another content area. So instead of a student coming into the iLab and saying, hey, Mr. Webb, I really want to do graphic design, I say, that's cool, I'll figure out what I can do for you. We could actually have some studio time where our art teacher, who was a graphic designer, would be open to work with all the students who have those interests. So a variety of learning methods. Topic and info is basically the title of the class. Completed, the trimester of completion, and then the level. So these are the things we would want to indicate on the transcript, and you would see this for all 6 of the GXs. You would also see this, and so you would see the 22 proficiencies listed under those GXs, and you would also see this for the two skills tests, the reading and math skills tests, and a final piece would be listing the courses, the students, or the learning experiences, learning opportunities, we're calling them, but actually doing a list so that colleges, you know, this says when you achieved the proficiency, this certifies that you achieved it, but colleges are probably going to want to say, so what were they doing until they started achieving proficiencies? And that will be just a record of what they took or what they did.
So the capstone complex assessment is a one-shot, one project, proficiency, you pass, done, and then all of the backup items that were done to get to that point. You see the bottom list growing? Is that the kind of the vision?
Well, if I understand correctly, so the bottom list is fixed too. Those are the 4 of the 22 proficiencies that fit under cultural
Okay.
community.
These 4 here, yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
those would be fixed. On the record of learning experiences, it would probably say more, because there's a good chance learning to write a paper, you're probably going to need to take more than one class for that. Right? And we haven't worked it out, but we'll have a way to show progress so that if you haven't achieved it, it doesn't mean you failed. You're on the road. You know, we don't say that our 9th graders in 9th grade English, boy, you really failed as 12th grade writers. You know, we need to build that into our system. But Mike, you also said, when you said the one-shot piece with the complex assessment, there's really 2 ways that students will be prepared for that. One is that they'll do it in their classes. So all of our classes are going to be linked classes and other learning experiences. The outcome of all of those is going to be to have something like a complex assessment. So kids will be practicing this over and over and over in lots of classes. So when we've identified, I know this one says culture and community, but I'll use communication because it's more familiar with the senior project. So when we say kids are going to come out of here with skill in communication, what's going to feed that is that they're going to take a number of classes over the years that are going to be practicing speech and formal paper writing. Of course, we already do a lot of that, but actually it's going to be a new emphasis on speech. And the idea is that by the end, you won't have just done one thing one time. What that'll be is I don't know if it'll be a trimester or a year or what, but that'll be a really big experience where they go in depth, kind of like a thesis or you know, a really significant experience. You use the word one shot, and I just wanted to make sure that means like one concrete experience, but it doesn't mean if you fail it, you don't graduate. Like you can get another shot at it if that doesn't work, or you can spend more time working.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the, how do we document it? The question then is, what do we need to do systemically so that we can make sure that we are actually doing this and really supporting kids to be able to weave together those three strands in a way that matters to them. So this is the how that we've identified as a system.
Can I ask a question before you get to that?
Sure.
Have you guys talked to college admissions folks or anything about transcripts and what they might look like and how it would be useful to them?
We have, Lindsay, do you feel competent to speak on this, or should I just channel Sarah Bertucci for us?
I can
do some
support
channeling.
your response.
Okay, good. So one of the things the Partnership for Change did, I think 2 years ago, is they did some investigation into colleges and how colleges were dealing with proficiency-based education, this kind of stuff. And what they discovered is that the state colleges, actually more than discovered, it was in the papers, but the state colleges said in relation to Vermont adopting, was it the Act 77 and the QS, right? And in response to that, the state colleges said, we're on board. We are going to take what you develop, and we're going to look at it and we're going to treat it seriously. Some of the small private colleges like Middlebury and I would assume like St. Mike's, they're a little bit smaller. They pay, historically, our understanding is they pay more attention to the specifics. They're used to looking at homeschool transcripts, private school transcripts, all kinds of alternative, like Goddard College type places where it's really narrative based in the transcript. When it comes to things more like the university, one of the things that was made clear to us is that as long as the cover sheet for the transcript is really clear and tells us what they're looking at, so that they can decipher it and make sense of it, that in some ways that's more important than some of the other pieces.
And I want to add one more piece to this. When we initially identified the graduation expectations, the overarching six, that included colleges, it included, so higher education was involved, we had businesses involved, we had a lot of community members, and it was clear that there were these, and they weren't necessarily just these six, there were like 19 we identified as really important skills, and we honed it down based, using a number of protocols. What was clear is the overarching skills that colleges and businesses want are these sets of skills. So what we're wanting to do is make sure that our system actually is focused on developing these skills and reporting out, like, this is what you need in a student. Let's make sure that we're really building those skills. That's the focus. So that's the other piece on this, is that we're trying to really represent students developing skills that have been identified as really critical.
And I think what I like that you brought up there is that the graduation expectations were created by the community. We got a lot of feedback in what those are, so the community is a part of this. But then at those board meetings where we had the businesses and the colleges come, it was really evident that those six really needed, it was what they were looking for. Yeah.
I would also add to that, the New England Secondary School Consortium has been a real leader in the region on this, and they have a tremendous amount of resources and models. They have transcripts, they have policies that should be put in place in school districts, a lot of mapping of how to get to this, and I know that we've looked at some of those materials, and there certainly is some relatedness to this.
Great.
And at the end of the day, I think what we end up with, if we tie what we've got for ends to what we're trying to piece together to put in the front end, is after 2 or 3 years, these colleges, UVM, Champlain, St. Mike's, are going to get used to, hey, I've seen this, I understand this, and it is either A, yes, it's good, or B, no, it doesn't. And somehow that measurement of, the success of our students when they leave is going to tie it all right back in. So, that's the end piece in the metrics.
Well, I mean, just looking at it, I would imagine that it gives admissions people the kind of information that they'd be sort of looking for to be coded in other ways, in an essay or something like that, in ways that are less evident, and you're giving it to them here. So I imagine they would like it. But I also know that like every bureaucracy, they have their ways of doing things, and it's hard to, adapt to new change. So I'm glad to hear that you've been checking around with them and just, seeing how they reacted.
Two thoughts crossed my mind. One is that the major complex assessments that the kids will do, these will be some of the things that they're proudest of. Much as on senior expo day, we have a lot of students say to us, that was my best day of high school. And it's because they went public and they were embraced by the community and respected for their work,
Yeah.
And I imagine that one thing, although we don't want kids to have giant portfolios full of, quizzes and things, we do want kids to have links to or preserve the work that they've done in those big six.
Yeah.
So that when they go to, whether it's a college interview or admissions meeting, they will be, or for their applications, for example, they'll be able to cite the experiences that they've had, and we hope that this will make our students stand out in another way. There was a second thing too, regarding rainbows, one of the students' questions, which was, are there any models elsewhere? That connects to the idea of, are they used to already doing any of this stuff? And probably our biggest model on this was Big Picture South Burlington. So it's a local school, it's kind of a school within a school. They have their own transcript, so it's not necessarily an SPHS transcript that they send out. So colleges evidently would be used to seeing some of this from schools like that.
So I want to mention one thing before we move on to that conversation. Is in that conversation with the colleges at our table, it was interesting to me, at least, that they knew the caliber of classes, so they were using what they knew about the school to sort of discern what that grade meant, right? And I think that as we move to this new way of proficiency, that they're going to adapt to knowing about those schools and what criteria the kids are going to have to go through to show what they know, to demonstrate what they know. They'll just start to change their ideas around that too, like they already do about the ABCD kind of thing. Awesome.
The
That just
school
kind of popped
profile
out.
plays a huge part in that.
Right.
Also, kind of the linking with college admissions people and getting them in here to see
In-
what's happening.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Huge.
Yeah, being really proactive. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, the parts of the house model. You'll notice I put house model in quotes here because we've been calling that, and that's kind of a big lie. It's really about more than just houses, right? It's really one piece of a whole bunch of pieces. So house model is just shorthand for a bunch of other things. So here are the pieces up there, and I'm just going to speak maybe briefly about them. You might jump in, that's great. So the first idea is to break the high school into 3 houses. What does that mean? Well, for us right now, it particularly means taking the faculty and dividing us into 3 sections, and then eventually dividing the students into those sections as well, with the intent that right now, I think we often find that the students in our TA and our advisory are not necessarily students that we see throughout the day. And although the house model initially, I think to answer some of your questions, I think it was Tori, will not have students pigeonholed. So students will be going out of their houses. They might be out of their house most of the day, but one of the things that we're building in is what we're calling house time right now. So right now we have a 20-minute advisory. Our plan next year is to have an hour-long period every day where a variety of different things could be taking place. One is going to be advising around the PLP, which we'll get to. I saw PLPs came up. We'll get to that a little bit down the way. There's going to be a lot of advising. There's going to be some of the traditional advisory activities, connecting with students, forging relationships. Could be an opportunity for special events. We could have school meetings. Certainly there could be house meetings. But the idea is during that time to build up a set of relationships within that so that we know our students better. And part of the strength behind the house is that right now a lot of advisories happen in isolation. And this will give us teachers the connections with each other to really help solve student issues where students are struggling. We never do it alone now as it is, but I think we can create a structure that makes us feel less isolated, makes us more responsive to our students. I'm going to move on unless, Madonna.
How will you be sorting the students into?
Yeah, that was your question, and that was a great question.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Gryffindor!
Slytherin.
He'll be in Slytherin with me, Ladonna. on you.
Both
It's
just
all
revealed
set.
yourselves.
No, she's, I was
Oh.
I'm going to peg you for Ravenclaw. Anyway, how are students going to be served? Well, there's a couple pieces to that. One is that after the New Year's break, we're going to, I'm going to start doing some, I'm calling them focus groups, but it's really going to be gatherings of groups of students who are interested, and I have kind of a list I've been building. And those students are going to be able to give us feedback about this. It doesn't mean the students are going to be able to dictate what it's going to be or not be, but it means it's going to help us do this a lot better and more attentively. One of the pieces of that, and it's going to have to happen by March, I would say, but one of the pieces is we're going to be looking at how do students get assigned. One really simple way would be to say, well, your teacher's going in that house over there, your advisory teacher, so you just follow them into that house. But there are other ways to do it too. We could create houses that are based on interest. We could have a punk rock house, no, probably not just punk rock, but we could have an arts house. We could have
Music.
we could have themes to the houses. You won't be in that house all day, but what it could do is create some spirit around that house.
I think that would be best. Are
I think that would
seniors
be best.
allowed, are seniors allowed to be in these focus groups?
You're allowed to sit in, and certainly your perspectives would be valuable. We're going to listen
Yeah.
with a little more focus to the, I'd say, grade 7 to 11
Okay.
right now. But if you're interested, you can call me. Okay?
It's just an innocent question, just hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that the student voice is being mined around this, and there's some, it matters, yeah, that they speak to this, yeah.
But also, like, when is this information going to be presented to the public? Because this is definitely a huge game changer for the students.
Yep. I think Ms. Grody's going to speak about the public, or no?
Later on? Okay.
Later on?
Well, yeah,
like
we'll do
now?
it after the presentation.
Oh, okay.
After the initial presentation, we'll come back to that question.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Advisory. We're about to tell kids that we're creating flexible pathways and that they can do almost anything under the sun, at least that we can help them access, right? We're going to have them in the community. They're going to be having creditable or proficiency-worthy experiences in all different kinds of places. But they're still teenagers. Our oldest ones maybe are in their 20s, but most of them are still teenagers. And, and we need to have a structure in place to help kids navigate that system. That'll be the advisory. In advisory, one of the key pieces will be PLP, Personalized Learning Plan. And we envision that the PLP will encompass, there are three pieces that I'm pretty sure it'll encompass from talking to Drew Blanchard, who's been involved in the development of the PLP, but kind of a personal profile, a goals section, and then really that kind of matrix that we showed you a couple of minutes ago, where we're working with students to say, all right, how are you meeting these experiences? How are you building your schedule? So right now, we might say to Rainbow, well, Rainbow, you've got 2 maths, but you need 1 more math to graduate. This will be looking more at, we might have the conversation, hey, LaDanya, have you passed your math proficiency test yet? Hey, LaDanya, have you used your math lab time to meet any of these other proficiencies? Could you? You know, I think under some of the critical thinking ones, okay? And so it would change the advising a bit. But it would put that transcript piece, it would put that list of graduate expectations and proficiencies to me, we put it at the center of that advising piece. One of the things that I think is a false thought that a lot of people have around PLPs is that it's all future oriented. Well, you know teenagers, if you know me, you know that you can't necessarily know what you're going to do a year from now, or even 2 months from now. And so this is really about what are you doing right now to navigate this system so that when you graduate, you've met our graduate expectations. So those are the constant that we're helping students get to those, because we know those, if they've gone through this process, they'll be ready for that next step. There's the goals piece, which does personalize it. But the idea is that we believe that if the kids reach these 6 graduate expectations, then at a level appropriate, appropriate to a high school graduate, but also to their goals, that we're saying, okay, then we believe you're going to be ready. The advisory piece is also about taking care of our students' sense of belonging in the school. It's a place where we can harvest students' voice, but also in a school where we have lots of students who struggle. We have lots of students with various needs. And it's a place for them to make sure they're connected with a caring adult. We have had TA in the past. This year, Lucas Dunn and his group of folks, Amy Shearer and Sharon Bundy and a few other folks, have been working on turning it into real advisement. And so they're piloting structures, actually. A lot of us are trying to shift what that's all about so that it, in the past, it ranged from everything from a tight-knit group to homeroom of the something in my dad's yearbook of the 1960s, And our goal is to really have intentional time to make those advisories meaningful. We've built in prep time where teachers will be meeting with their house colleagues to develop activities, to have time to, right now we don't really have time built in for parent contact, and we sort of do it, we fit it in. This sets time aside where we say we're going to prioritize our students' ability to navigate the system and their emotional and social well-being.
On the process of that, the task force, advisory task force includes a parent. It included actually 2 parents when we initially met. I don't know if both parents were involved at the last task force, but also 3 students, 1 middle and 2 high school students that are going to be on that. And the task force will meet at least a couple more times during the year. In addition to the committee of 3, which sounds pretty cool, but the committee will continue to meet as well. Lucas, Shannon, and Amy, and continue to plan in between times.
The next piece talks about various GX-focused learning opportunities. We kind of covered that when we looked at the model transcript, where we talked about there's going to be math lab, there's going to be iLab, there's going to be content sort of related studios, there's going to be some more traditional classes, there's going to be internships. We're going to be able to include on this transcript experiences that students have at the tech centers. Of course, we already do that with credits. We're thinking we're going to be able to do this with proficiencies. And any other approach that students can have to learning outside of the school or inside, really. One thing about the GX focus, the reason they're GX focused is that what we're expecting will happen leading into next year, I assume, and strengthening as we go along, is that all class experiences will identify a GX assessment that students will finish the class having practiced. So they will get the GX practice throughout, and also 1 or maybe 2 or maybe pieces of some of the graduate proficiencies, so that they will have had those learning experiences too. So classes will have both of those pieces. And therefore, students will get lots of practice in the GXs.
Matt, can I just say something about that piece?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I started to do as soon as I got here was going out and meeting local businesses in Winooski and introducing myself and talking a little bit about where we're headed, and keeping a sheet of all those people with their contacts and asking them, would you at some point be willing to support students, whether it's job shadow, whether it's internship, whether it's mentoring, and so we have the beginnings of that kind of database. Recently, I've started working with Vermont Business Roundtable and with someone from Champlain in workforce development, and so we have plans to continue to expand that list of folks who would be interested and would be kind of our go-to when a student says, I really would like to learn more about this. We can look and match them up, and then through the advisor or the appropriate person in the house team would help connect that student to a business or an organization to hopefully work out some sort of an agreement so that they can engage in that learning.
And what Sean was just mentioning about made me think of that we are already embedding the capacity in our staff to do this. There was a question about how does this affect the budget, and I'll answer that in 1 second. But right now, because of the iLab, we have Willie Andrews, who's really working on being our community liaison. I've been working on the transcript and a lot of this proficiency and demonstration-based learning. And so we're building the capacity in-house. We also have our teacher leadership team. So we have a number of teachers used to taking these roles, includes Tom. And we have the advisory development folks. So we have, and for each of the GXs, we're developing materials, and we've got folks working on those teams. So people on the faculty have been able to link in a variety of different ways. Trimesters with expos. We want to make the expos happen 3 times a year. One of the things that we found too is that a year can be a really long time for a student to be in a class. And we could go with semesters possibly, but the trimesters are even a more condensed, sort of long unit length of learning that makes some sense. It works with the calendar in terms of some of the breaks. There's fall till Thanksgiving, there's winter till about early March, February break. And then there's a spring trimester, but each of those would end with an expo experience. And one of the things we found last year, and you students really can speak to this, but it seemed like a lot of students really stepped up their work at the end and said, oh, I've got to perform. I've got to be on stage in front of people. I've got to have a display that I'm going to share, and anybody can ask me questions. And so having more frequent times when we have students step up is something that we'd like to see. It also helps us teachers stay laser focused, knowing that, you know, I think the way it is right now, we have our expo in January, you can kind of get through first quarter without thinking much about it. We want to make sure that, you know, you don't wait till second quarter to say, all right, it's complex assessment time. Progress reporting, again, sort of touched on that with the transcript. That would be, I see the, really the transcript and the PLP and the report cards as kind of a triangle. They all depend on each other a bit. Well, more than a bit. They really do depend on each other.
So maybe go back to Rainbow, to your question about the messaging and how do we get the messaging out to the community. I know that Kate has worked quite a bit on the messaging plan, so I'll let her talk about the bigger messaging plan. One of the pieces that we didn't say is that next year, when we go to the house model, the students who are juniors and seniors, we don't expect them to graduate with that new transcript. This is going to be, there's going to be a hybrid, you know, transition in process that's going to take a couple of years for students. We would expect that the sophomores and freshmen next year, when they graduate, they would be using fully that new transcript, that they would be demonstrating proficiency in those areas and really meeting that. So one of the things to communicate is your child, if they're a senior this year or a junior this year, we will be looking at their transcript, and they will probably graduate looking more traditional than they will by proficiency, but there will be a blend.
But we'll get all the building blocks they need along the way.
And
That's a tough
correct.
Transition.
Yes, they will be getting all of the, so their classes, their learning opportunities are all going to be GX focused. They're going to be taking opportunities within the GPs, but they may not meet all of those. And they probably won't meet all of those, but they will have at least 3 complex assessments. They'll have the problem solving, no, the critical, whichever one.
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking one. Yep, the communication, and then the well-being. Those 3 next year are going to be required of all students, and they'll be piloting or experiencing the other 3. The other piece with messaging.
Hi, everybody. So last August, the leadership team meets and puts together, we're now getting really good at doing year-long kind of planning in terms of how we're going to be using our time. And we were able to say, we're going to need to communicate this message out to large groups of constituents, our students, our families, our teachers, and continue to be accurate and supportive of understanding this big transformation, this big change that's happening. So Leanne and I have had several meetings with Lindsay, who has a lot of training and learning from professional public relations and education, and she's really helped us design that document that did go out, the evergreen document, as Leon mentioned it, that had the weaving on it. That was really our first big stab at coming up with a way of communicating a lot of information in a short and succinct way. And we're going to get even better at it. We did that and translated it into 5 languages in the cover letter, and have a really nice board out of it. Really nice, because Kinko's, I think, made a mistake. It got even bigger. So that's the first step, to just come up with a way of talking about this weaving of the education together for each student. In terms of next steps, we have, Matt is going to be running some focus groups to get some insight into the process, and I think that is really, especially what students are going to be most curious about. What are these houses? How am I going to get involved in them? We are looking at a family community event also in March, February, March, as a date for also coming together and bringing people together through maker activities to explore GXs and understand GXs, to really bring understanding what this learning is all about. That is going to, well, it's based on, I would say, some of our experiences with STEM Night, for example. One of the comments I kept hearing at STEM Night was that everybody is engaged in this. It doesn't matter where they're from, what their backgrounds are, who they are. So we're looking at really coming up with activities and ways to get families involved through hands-on activities. After that, we'll be looking at parent-teacher conferences in April again as another date, I think, to have a lot more out so that we can rely on those conferences to be supportive of the changes so that teachers and families can have more intimate conversations. Leon and I made ourselves available at those conferences, and we're going to get better at doing that and more engaging with that. But as another opportunity that's already scheduled in to come together and talk about the changes in the house model, how that will work, how your kid will be sorted into the house, and how the transcript and the proficiency education piece will be working together.
I just have another.
Oh, yeah.
I have another question too. Like, so with the piece presenting through a letter and through the conferences as well, I feel like that's definitely really efficient for the families, but also for the students who are definitely taking this firsthand. Wouldn't it be better to have the students who are working in those focus groups, or just students who are more like, just an example perhaps, like the students who know a little more about this information than most of the student population, say LaDanya and I, for example, to present this information to the student population, because I think students are more likely to listen to their peers than the teachers, let's be honest here.
Yes. And we've talked about that, and we've talked about, especially when we're bringing about the new gateway requirements. So 8th graders are going to have to gateway through our 2 GXs to move into high school through the communications GX and the problem solving GX. And we talked about getting together some 9th graders to come in and talk about what Expo Week is like and how and the transition to 9th grade. So those ideas, Rainbow, are present. We have to ignite them and get them going. But I completely agree with you.
That'd be fun.
So thank you for saying in this forum. And Lindsay just reminded me, she's been working really, really hard on an incredible grant proposal to bring $25,000 worth of resources to this school for messaging. So like, for example, the Family Maker Night that I was just talking about would ideally be funded through this proposal. Not to mention a video that she has worked with a bunch of folks to get together an incredible budget for a professionally made video to document the change that's going to be happening in this community, so that we are going to have a really beautiful, shiny piece to share in-house and globally about the work that's going on here. So is that?
Thank you.
Other questions?
Do you have more?
Do we have more? No, we finished the formal presentation.
Oh,
We have a lot more information, but we're not presenting it unless we're asked.
Okay.
I just had,
Go ahead.
Mike, you asked about, I think it was you asked about budget, and when we as the leadership team were designing this, we specifically designed it thinking only about the existing resources, existing staff and support staff. We did not design it so that we'd be asking for more in any of those categories. The rest, in terms of students doing more independent projects outside of the school, I'd make a joke about not cutting $5,000 from the iLab, if that's really your business. But being able to have that, that's just going to be funding, that you would have built in every month.
Okay.
Anything else about funding? I mean, in
I guess
the
my
long-
biggest question there with regards to the budget is that it was considered in a flat nature
Yes.
was the outlook.
Yeah. Yeah, we feel that if we feel it's the right thing to do and that we should be able to do it really, our goal would be within existing resources.
Great.
Not to make the new thing more expensive and difficult than the old thing. And a piece of it too, as I said to you, is we built in, a lot of us with our experiences on the teacher leadership team and various development groups and iLab staffing and math lab moving ahead. And really, most folks have in some way been involved, and I think it's built internal capacity, which is a nice thing because then we're not dragging in people too often to tell us what to do. We're really building it here.
Right.
I think one of the things that's been helpful on the board's part over time has been a commitment to lower student-teacher ratios, because some larger schools around the state are having a challenging time figuring out how to transition to this because they don't have the staffing, because they have such large, student-teacher ratios. So, and we need those lower numbers, whatever system that we're in, whether it's the new one or the existing one. But we're positioned a lot better than some other places because of that.
I think it's also worthy noting that the way you all structure yourselves and facilitate yourselves to implement this change is powerful, because this change is hard and all schools are trying to go through it, but the systems that you guys have put in place to make sure you're working collaboratively as a team and using the time that you have and the resources that we do have is incredibly impressive. It's great for our kids. It's great for this school district.
And it feels really different, the focus that we have on the GXs. It feels really different from the traditional approach to education where you're teaching a class and there's not necessarily a sense of what is the real skill that this is building in the intentional way that we're doing that, where all of our work is aligned and building those 6 primary skills.
And it seems that even though the legislature gave us Act 77 on this, they didn't tell us how to do it. And you're giving a really great model for how to scoop the kids in to get them to that personalized place of owning their education and owning all parts of themselves, not just the academic content. Which is
Tori, you created, I think, a really nice transition to us talking a little bit about the Agency of Education.
You're welcome.
And so you talked about how vague and open Act 77 was, and how open the EQS makes it for districts.
Keep talking, you're doing great.
Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to make sure to do was reach out to the Agency of Education and say, hey, we've come up with this thing. Is this in the ballpark? Are we doing okay here? So we reached out to Tom Alderman, who's one of the big wigs at the Agency of Education, and he in secondary and post-secondary education. And we said we want to show you what we've come up with, and we want to hear if you think that this is within the realm of possibility. So last Friday, we sat down with him. We showed him we showed him most of the materials you've seen tonight. We described most of the things we've described to you tonight. And when Leon and I got into his car, Leon said, I think he was glowing. And what he described, in his view, he feels that Winooski is significantly in the vanguard, ahead compared to the work of a lot of different districts. He seemed to have really positive feedback for the fact that it helped to have the Nellie Mae partnership money to help us do this, but it allowed us to really embrace that and say, okay, we're going to create a homegrown system. We're going to internalize this here. We're going to do what makes sense for Winooski. And he seemed really supportive of that. And he clearly wishes everybody was doing that, but he was extremely supportive of the fact that we were doing it.
Looking at the transcript, that was very exciting to him with the way we were approaching that. And also feeling I think he also mentioned that he felt that colleges were in a place to be looking at transcripts, right?
I think he's the one who mentioned the cover sheets to us and said, as long as the school profile is really clear.
Yep.
I think you mentioned that, yeah. So it felt like we got the big seal of approval there.
So I've got just a couple of things. I think the content that you're working through is critical. Don't lose track of the communication piece. I greatly appreciate that as being as well thought through as the rest of the content, because without the parents understanding what's going to happen up front, you get pushback that you don't need to have to deal with when you actually get into the tough time where you're actually changing. So I very much appreciate that.
Can I comment on that? I think we acknowledge that's one of the areas we've struggled. Our focus has been so heavy on identifying the challenges that we're facing and finding ways to address those in a timely manner, that we've struggled to keep parents informed at the level that we would like to. I think we have, from the very beginning, using newsletters, we've been trying to put out there on a regular basis, we're making changes, we're moving towards proficiencies, we're working on the graduation expectations, but pulling it together and communicating it in a more cohesive message has not happened as well. And I agree with you, I think that's one of the things that we're working on.
You could fool me, because the evergreen letter being pinpointed to what you're looking at for a language to deliver to which households for which parents, with a message that is, if not pinpointed to exactly where you're going, setting the direction and the tone. And so I think, looking from the outside in, you may be more critical on yourselves than need be, but I can appreciate that to keep moving forward.
But that was really recent. I think that's where we started to really pull the messaging together and really focus it.
Yep. The other piece, we are getting a bunch of focus from around the state as being ahead of the curve. That's always a good thing, but it's always a challenge to stay ahead of it and not get complacent with it. So you guys do definitely seem to be pushing forward well with a broad swath of the staff. So
we're not complacent.
Yeah, I can sense that from what you're showing us here tonight. It's not easy. And the only other thing I had, Leon, is going back to your very lead statement about not everything going well. If everything were going well, you would be doing things and we wouldn't be moving forward. So that you have you never have failures, you only have learning, and if you keep going with that, we're good. So keep moving.
Were there any questions that people had that they felt didn't get addressed?
I want to thank you guys. I don't want to give you the last word, but I just want to thank, it's tremendous work, and it is hard to communicate it while you're building it, and that's always a challenge in education, I think. One of the things that I know that you are doing in the leadership team, but I would encourage you to continue doing, is to reflect on the iLab experience, the Math Lab experience, because those are both microcosms of what is going to be much larger next year. And how do we learn from that? What worked well, what didn't work so well and needs to be tweaked, or or disbanded or whatever. But those are two like just really solid, tangible, rich learning experiences that we can continue to use to refine the house model.
And I think it was learning from that to some degree, when we initially thought of the houses, I think we were thinking, well, there'll be a math lab in every house, there'll be an I lab in every house. And so students will spend 90% of the time in the house. And as we went through this, we realized that these are older kids. We don't need the same thing as middle school teams. We don't need to lock kids into those structures. We just have to provide a little bit more support to what there already is. And we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have like thought this far, probably, but what will like the specific schedule of the day look like? Will it still be 4 blocks in a day?
So, so schools that have used trimesters, the example where I first learned about this was U32 when I taught in that area of Vermont a long time ago, 15 years ago. I didn't teach at U32, but they had trimesters, and the way that folks with trimesters usually do it is they do a 6-period day. The reason being, Mr. Wheeler wants it to be 6 periods over every 2 days. And so it probably will, because he's the boss. But
That's what I wanted to hear.
on the other hand, I did mention to the teacher yesterday that you wanted to have 2-hour classes every other day, and they were like, 2 hours? What?
So that's an option.
Yes, it is an option. But the idea, at any rate, it doesn't have to be everyday classes. It also, but the idea is there would be 6 during a trimester. 1 would be your house time, presumably, and we shouldn't treat house time like it's not where you're going to get credit. If you're doing outside experiences, you're going to be bringing those into your advisor during house time. So I would think 6 during a trimester, 1 method or the other.
Well done.
Yes.
Follow-up question, will this affect non-core classes, like art, negatively, or not at all?
Our hope, LaDanya, is actually that it would increase access to it. Because right now things get really locked in, and if you can't get to Mr. Argrave's band period that block because you want to take, what is it, European history, AP World History, that we could make it more accessible. Not having run through it ever, I can't make a promise, but I can tell you that's a really strong goal of ours. We also, when we created the graduate proficiencies, we emphasized some of those experiences a little bit differently. So we actually have a proficiency for performing arts, proficiency for visual arts, one for experiencing learning a foreign language. You don't have to be a pro at a foreign language, but we want to value the fact that at this school, learning language is important. It's important to the people who are learning English. We want to have a common experience for our American-born English-speaking kids. We have a personal finance piece in there. We believe that that's an important piece that our students can learn from. So what we're trying to do is bring those electives, those arts experiences, those wellness experiences, bring them to the center. Anything else? Follow?
This is inspiring.
Yeah.
It is.
It's really
Very much.
wonderful.
Well, and I just want to say again, and I said this at the Vermont School Boards Association conference, but it's a rare and wonderful thing where you have complete alignment. You've got the school board superintendent, school administration. I always like, because since I'm the president of the union, I like to throw in the union as a piece of that, because I think that's important. Our teacher leaderships and our faculty. We just got to get the kids and the parents, and we've got a plan for that. But without all of those pieces being in alignment, I think it'd be easy for this to shake at some point, shake apart a little bit. But as long as we're all aligned, I mean, that's pretty wonderful. And so appreciation to you guys, too. Goes both ways.
I only have one last thing. It was one question on there, and it's more rhetorical than anything, and that is keeping an eye on what do you view this being 5 years out? and don't, trying to, you're always in the day-to-day, what are we gonna do, how are we gonna structure the day, what are we gonna move in and out, and how do we set up this and that, but, every once in a while, what it looks like when you're done and it's successful,
Yep.
is taking that step back, so.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we're gonna hear from you again at some point.
You can invite us.
All right, anything else? Good. LaDanya, Rainbow?
Thank you.
Great, all right, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your
Thank you.
lates.
Very exciting.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming. All right, student report to the board.
All
You
right.
can leave it, yeah.
I do appreciate the input on that section there, that's why we invite you guys for the insight,
Right.
for sure.
We're pretty excited about the house.
Oh, good. I love hearing your questions and your thoughts about it.
It is,
It makes it real for us, hearing it from the students.
all right.
I like the theme idea, the music house.
Yes.
I feel like he was making sure he put that in because we're both band geeks.
Right, right,
Maybe arts,
right.
a little
Arts.
broader.
Arts.
Yeah,
Sports house.
yeah. Animal house.
Sorting hat.
Animal house.
Sorting hat.
Move-
Seriously though, a sorting hat? Like that'd be awesome.
That would be
Winooski sorting
hilarious.
hat.
Especially if it was really magic and it talked in the head.
Yeah.
Or like when you record
Moving right along.
You could record something and like have a little thing in there.
We're gonna,
record like something like
so if we could bring this back to our agenda.
We're not talking about the
I
sorting
got-
hat, is that
well,
on there?
No, I got home at 1:45 this morning, so I'm running out of gas here. So,
Toot toot.
on we go, thank you.
Alright, so students in the elementary are still continuing with their green and yellow thought system, and lately there's been a lot of class celebrations to honor how many green thoughts have been going on in each classroom.
Yeah.
So for example, classes will get more free time or extra recess to celebrate all these green thoughts. And speaking of class celebration, Mrs. Getz' third grade class recently had a celebration of their family. Students researched a country and then brought in their parents to celebrate their culture and family.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. Were you there?
I was.
Sweet. Alright, and as mentioned in Mr. McMahon's report, fifth graders got to see Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief play based on a novel, and also got to collaborate with people from the Flint. And of course, on December 17th, there will be the annual JK Holiday Conference,
Yeah.
the
Whoop, whoop.
cutest time of the school year.
It really is.
Absolutely adorable. And currently with the Penguin Plunge, we are number 2,
What?
losing to our rival CVU.
Again?
Chasing, not losing too.
No, yeah, I'm sorry.
What's the gap
Poor
right
choice
now?
of words. We're at 2,900, CBU is at 3,700.
As of 5:30 p.m.
Wait, so that's not bad.
No.
I'll put that up right now.
Exactly. I was saying, we haven't donated
Here,
yet.
I'll send it
Look
to
at
you, you can add it to mine.
Yeah.
Put it on his page.
Speaking of which,
Rainbow is going to be plunging.
hey, you missed the one above it.
Yeah, Mr. DeCaro.
Yay!
Yeah.
I'm in.
All right.
All right.
Oh, still chicken. Julian? You in?
In what? What are you talking about?
The cold, icy lagers.
I'm still unsure.
Oh, I know.
The board.
Yeah.
Board jumps.
Board. I know it
Board
should be
jump.
part of our. That's
Board
our
jump?
community engagement, right? Community engagement, right?
That'd be great. Jumping back a little bit, on November 17th, the middle high school had their orchestra, chorus, and band concert, the first one of the year. The entire concert went over well and featured 2 prominent solos by Austin Minchell, main trumpet, and Jared Fountain, drummer. The concert was recorded, so maybe there will be a way to get the videos up on site.
Sweet.
I'd love to have that
Yeah,
happen.
wonderful.
Yeah. The craft fair on November 21st was a big hit, like usual. Many amazing crafts were sold, including many from our own Winooski community. And the night before, we had many students working diligently to help set up the craft fair and help get the craft fair set up. And of course, the train shows on December 5th, also a big hit. The yearbook committee and Peace Jam group collaborated to hold a bake sale at the train show. And speaking of the Peace Jam, right now they have been focusing their efforts on internal improvements. They've been redefining their mission and group norms and are working on team building. and they're currently searching for a conference to visit in the spring. Last year, they went to a conference in Connecticut. And lately, there's been a lot of fundraisers everywhere. The Yankee Candle fundraiser for the prom committee ended, and they raised about $700 from sales. And they will be having snowflake grams, which is basically candy grams that people order and to give to their friends. They'll be sold by the prom committee starting tomorrow. There's currently a fudge fundraiser being held by the student council and prom committee. Oh, did it end? It ended. All right. So no more fudge. It's very sad.
No fudge for you.
Yeah. There's a hot dog bake sale to support the Peace Jam and Yearbook Committee, and not just hot dogs, but a bunch of other great food.
Was that approved by the wellness committee?
Never mind, never mind.
Tofu dogs.
Tofu dogs.
Tofurkey.
And a fundraiser for the April New York City trip with Ms. Paquette and Mr. Dunn will be coming up soon. Businesses around Chittenden County were asked to donate, and there will be a raffle. Tickets for the raffle will be selling January 18th.
I'll be selling those tickets, so I will be advertising.
Good, bring him to the board.
Shameless advertising. Yearbooks are on sale for $20, so you can pre-order them now and have them come in by February, I think. If the yearbook committee gets enough money, 8th graders and seniors will have them for free, which is an awesome opportunity for them. There were class superlatives for every class sent out about a couple weeks ago. As superlatives include class clown, most likely to bring a change to the world, best style, most athletic. And another thing, two of Miss Paquette's effective communications classes are currently mentoring throughout the elementary schools, such as kindergarten, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade students. There are 23 students that head down once a week, and students started in October and will continue until a week after vacation. It's going very well. You can see the adorable photos on the Winooski Twitter. And in the spring, there should be 18 students for mentoring, and I'll be one of them too.
Oh, what grade?
I don't know yet.
Probably the same.
So, Ms. Paquette also recently met with CCV to discuss trying to get more of her classes to become college classes for students. So next year, more business classes should become dual enrollment classes. And then something on the bigger topic, we have JAMPO discussion going around right now. Students and teachers are getting ready for January Expo, which will be held on January 13th and 14th, a Wednesday and Thursday. JAMPO is like Expo Week in June, except that this expo celebrates the work that students have done in the past semester, rather than the entire year. And so students have 2 presentations and have the option to choose from effective oral written communication, critical thinking, problem solving, and or wellness. Some more shameless self-advertising. There's Vermont Youth Orchestra Association has Orchestra Chorus Palooza. That'll be this Sunday. And we have 4 Winooski students spread out in all the different VYOA groups. We have a violinist in Vermont Youth Strings. We have a cellist in Vermont Youth Philharmonia. We have a bassist in the Vermont Youth Orchestra. I wonder who that is. And we have a bass singer in the Vermont Youth Chorus. And all 4 of these students will be at this concert, and we'll all be playing Sleigh Ride together at the very end. So there's going to be a mass orchestra. And you can come see this festive concert this Sunday at the Flynn from 4 to 6. Tickets are $12 for adults and $7 for students. Whether you're a fan of music or want to see Winooski students perform, you should definitely come watch. No more advertising. As for sports, we've had the Unified Sports Bowling. Several students went to a bowling tournament in Barrie yesterday.
In Barrie?
After weeks of practice. The first middle school boys basketball game is on the 11th against Grand Isle. A team starts at 3:30 and the B team starts at 4:30. The first middle school girls game is on the 11th as well at St. Albans, and the B team starts at 4 and the A team starts at 5. Varsity boys are doing very well. They had their first game on the 5th against Stowe. They won 70-19.
Yeah!
Wow.
They also won their
Stowe.
game yesterday too, about 55-40.
Nice.
The next JV and varsity game will be tomorrow at Mount Abraham. The JV starts at 5:30 and varsity starts at 7 p.m. They're 2-0, and hopefully that'll be a good
That's a good streak. JV and varsity girls' first game was today against Virgins. It was in the gym, if you noticed. Took a peek over there. JV started at 5:30 and varsity started at 7. So hopefully they won today. We can't really check now, but. And last but not least, the best of all, Christmas break starts on the 24th. So. Yay!
On the 24th, so
We'll see you.
So school's in session Monday,
on the
Tuesday.
23rd.
Through the 23rd, Wednesday.
On Wednesday
Yeah.
too.
To Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, super late this year.
Sweet.
Yeah, I know, so I was thinking too.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
That is funny.
Only thinking about ourselves.
First thing I thought when I saw it. It's
Yes.
like, yeah.
Sometimes you
Damn.
gotta do that.
Yeah.
Whatever. And then we come back on January 4th for the new year, 2016.
2016.
Wow, 2016.
Year of the dog.
Thank you for the reports. Those are very awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Informative. Thank you.
All right.
Let's hear the monkey.
Next, we have the hour monitoring report of 4.1. Did you get? So I think from a format perspective, we had talked about eliminating the checklist at the top and doing each section individually, if I looked at through the minutes properly. Invited through Google Docs to edit, help edit, change, update, and whatever. As I went down through this, I think I came to the conclusion that we are in pretty good shape for most of the 6 items under 4.1. Though in some cases it was difficult to come up with what you would term data. How do we do this? How do we measure this and how do we do it? I was more focused, I think, on getting the interpretation, which is, I would say, the easier part completed. And then wanted to talk here about the data piece. And I came down to 4.1.3 is that reporting partial compliance on that section, mostly from attendance and preparation for meetings piece. Policy-making principles, don't think we have issues. Respect for roles, I think we're good. Trying to ensure the continuance of the government's capability, I think that's in the forefront of our minds. But the data on that 4.1.3 that I report partial compliance comes mostly from personal observation. I wanted to throw just that high level out, just for discussion. That come close to thoughts?
My first thought, as I was looking through these last few days, was what evidence do I have to back this up with? And what sort of evidences can we collect to keep ourselves, one, I guess I'll back up and say that I think that monitoring ourselves is foundational for excellent governance. Like, this is great, because it keeps us in the forefront of what's expected of us and what to do. And in that, then how do we craft evidences to demonstrate that?
Yep.
So as I was looking through it after you did the interpretations, I thought, well, I don't know how to say what my data is, what my evidences are. My thoughts? Julian?
No thoughts.
Yeah.
To me, I think Sean's input on a lot of this is, as an outsider looking in, maybe even from LaDanya and Rainbow, do we exhibit some of this is probably a worthwhile conversation at some point, right?
The survey that we do for.
Right, I mean, it's hard to look at yourself and tell yourself you're doing a not so good job and why, so. Where do we go from here? I want to make sure we continue. I want to put this one to bed at some point.
Well,
And-
so will we get, on our training day for policy governance, will we get more information on how to do this better? Because I think
Yeah.
too, what I struggled with was this whole idea of was it that we need to be, inspiring the organization through careful establishment, of broad written policies. We do have, reflecting our, the board's values and perspective, which ultimately reflect the community's values and
Right.
perspectives. How do we make sure, and one of them was like being in front of it, like not just going with what, where's that one?
Reacting.
Not the well,
Forward.
it was discipline, give me 1 second. Well, I had remembered reading that we would bring forward policies, be more proactive in bringing forward policies versus reacting to what the school, what the administration was bringing to us.
Yes.
And I think that, to me,
Right.
was speaking to that sort of direct control and inspire the organization. And I just,
Not merely. a
yeah,
reactive
the initiator,
staff.
thank you, it was
Yeah.
number one, yeah, the initiator of policy.
Right.
I think having more training around that, of being more clear with ourselves about what matters most to our community, and making sure that we do have really thoughtful, written.
Yeah. So I have
anyway,
a
more training,
meeting
I
tomorrow
guess.
morning at 7:45 with Val.
Oh,
To talk
great.
about our training for January 9th was the proposed date. This was the topic,
Okay.
one of two topics. The other one was,
Linkage with the ownership.
the linkage with the owner. I mean,
that was-
that to me
right,
is
'cause-
so,
Well, that also ties in with what our role is, right? And being
Right.
able to bring our perspectives and values of our community in.
yep.
Yes.
So those are the two items we're hoping to
Okay.
have her help us move forward with, and I get that discussion tomorrow. So I'll get something out tomorrow to try to close better on that.
So for clarity's
Time.
sake, what we're looking for with this one as the initial one, do we want to, would you say that you want to sort of put this to rest? Do you want to sort of make agreements on this in terms of like, yes, this flies as our first pass through this? Do we want to wait until January till we get more information and training on it? Where are we going with this?
We have another one right behind this. So we have, regularly scheduled views of
Same
doing
monitoring
this.
report. I
Same
mean,
monitoring report, different
On the
policy.
policy, okay.
Right. And so this may be looked on, I'm open to saying this one's good
Mm-hmm.
for now, for what we know.
Sure.
When we bring it back up, we will hopefully scoff at our.
Like, look at how
you know,
cute we were back then when we did what we were doing.
Right, we could have done this a whole lot better back then, but that's part of growing.
Right,
learning.
absolutely.
And then take on another one and do it
Okay.
better based on what we learned in January
Yeah.
and go forward with that. Now, having said that, if we agree that 413, with attendance preparation, pretty much, and I understand from an attendance perspective, we're not gonna be here all the time, always. I mean, we're gonna be out of town, we're gonna be, family things come up, that I understand. To me, it's not necessarily that piece as much as it is the preparation. And I guess my only challenge there is, and I'm as guilty as anyone, is taking the time on the weekend before to take some little bit of time, and I know you got precious little of that. I've got more than my share now, but I spent a lot of years with none. So I understand, I do understand. But trying to make the time in that week before to show that we're prepared.
And that brings up another point for me.
That's ongoing checkpoint.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the only thing, is when are we gonna close this thing? I would like to say tonight, and
Right.
have it be an ongoing checkpoint as to whether we are.
Is with the other progress monitoring reports, when there is not compliance or partial compliance, there's a plan,
Timeline,
like
closure.
or to improve.
Yep.
And I don't know if for this monitoring, for this policy, if we use the same
Yeah, and
format
I
in
think,
terms of having a plan to say, this is how we'll move towards compliance.
yeah, and I think, and I think we've all gotta be here to do this, so maybe we close it in January, but that is that we acknowledge that this is something we're gonna work on, and that the checkpoints are monthly. I don't think we're ever closed on those, actually.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You're really never gonna say, we're done, we're all good.
Yeah.
Because the first
We're
time
all
you sit
clear.
back, you're done. right? You're back out of compliance. So it's as much an observation that you can do it better or continue to do it.
The only thing I would add is I think I think maybe you have more data than you think in some of these areas and it could be a little more specific. So for example, in talking about the interpretation 4.13 where, you're talking about attendance and preparation, your data could be attendance. You can go back through meeting and minutes and say, whatever that is, not personal down to the personalized level, but on average, whatever that number might be or something. Or in 4.14, that one was probably the most specific, but you could
Right.
talk about the financial literacy, you could talk about after, at reorganization, there's always something about open meeting or the trainings that were done in a certain time period, to really show what you've done, because you have done a lot. So, write it down and show that you've done it.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a Google Doc, shared in a specific folder. We'll hope to keep all of them.
Great.
If you can spend maybe just a little bit of time thinking potentially about the data or the evidence, and what's in there, if we can clarify it, polish it, we'll just put it, I don't know, adopt it, or I'm not sure exactly, maybe that's one of the questions Val can help us answer. What do you do with these things?
Yeah.
Approving it or whatever
Right.
would take care of it. Okay, good. And again, I'd spend more than enough time taking these first ones on just to make sure that we get what we need as we go forward.
We appreciate your leadership on this.
Yes, we do.
Great.
The last one, 8C, December meeting with the legislators. We are, Sean and I are meeting with the city, Seth, Deke, the Burlington team here next Thursday with the legislators and going through our wish list, want list, push list, whatever, for their advocacy in Montpelier next week. So thoughts on, I mean, the primary thoughts are obvious.
Yeah, it's just one story right now, right?
Yeah, and again, it's,
I think it is also
Anything.
an opportunity to talk about the general difference in Winooski, Burlington versus the rest of Vermont too.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the challenges that we face in that respect, from funding and from support from outside agencies, all those kinds of things. Just to continue to let people know that there are differences.
Yeah.
Would it be worthwhile for us to craft a Winooski board letter? In terms of being able to highlight with clarity, the points that sort of written down, that I was just writing down from our budget talks.
I would be more than happy to deliver it to, if you've got some thought. Again, the hardest part with I would think it might not be a bad thing to get one to Clem, Indiana,
Right.
from a board perspective. The
then
hardest part
also
is
this is-
putting something on paper to get
Right,
started,
right,
and then,
right. It was something we spoke in passing about, and especially as then all of a sudden the numbers really sort of, got intense. It's like, okay, it would be nice to sort of craft something in support of our community.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah, and we have an audience and an opportunity to deliver it. So,
And that was December 17th?
next Thursday
Yeah.
morning,
7:30 to 9:30.
and we're hosting here, so. Yeah, I mean, do you want to try to take a stab
I
at
can-
putting something down? I don't know where we would, again, a Google Doc seems to come to mind to be able
Certainly,
to have a
yeah.
place to be able to share it.
Okay.
And you're right, I think we've got all the issues that we've talked about. It's crafting them into a coherent story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
good. Anything else? If you think of anything that's specific other than what's that, I think that'll be a good starting point for talking points as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Recent community activity and/or next agenda items, anything on either?
I don't remember what I did yesterday.
Glazed.
Yeah, it is, it's certainly getting to that point. So upcoming stuff listed, we decided the 16th and the 13th, 23rd stay. Breakfast next week, winter performance, all listed there. So at this point, I would accept a motion to move into executive session. It should be relatively brief. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We will now move into executive session.